Okay, third time's a charm here. Keep tinkering with things and pushing buttons. We'll get it figured out sooner or later. Let's see here. I've got to, there's always that first minute at the beginning of the stream, getting all the pieces in the right place. And there we go. Here, if I go there, just so I can see all of my, just so I can see all of my comments and stuff. I think I got it all. All right. Come back to that. I thought today we would tinker with n8n, which I've been hearing lots about. I've seen lots about. I've played with it. I've downloaded the community version at one point, and then ran through a trial. And I think it's important to understand and utilize, or at least test out different systems. So I'm what I would call a generalist, which means that I basically tinker with things on and off. And as new technology comes out, I try out new technology and tinker with said technology, just so I understand at least what it does. Now, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's led to this habit, I'll say out of necessity, where I don't particularly deep dive into a lot of things. I shallow dive into a lot of things, meaning that I learn just enough to get me going. So we're going to tinker with this here. I was playing with, we were working on a web assistant sort of in make.com the other day. Let's just go have a look at that. Not mail, not that one. And what we were trying to do, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to come back to this because that's just called life. Things get busy. I think it was called a personal assistant, right? Yeah, this one here. This is the one we were working on. And basically, the mail hook is the part that I want to try out. So there were two parts to this. One of the things that I like, I think I will really enjoy about using n8n over make.com, or for some scenarios, is one thing that you can do in n8n that I haven't seen a way to do in make.com is the ability to have multiple triggers. So let me just set this up for a second. Let's pretend that we'll just get rid of this. We'll get rid of this, and our first node, our trigger, is going to be, this is the Mailgun one that I want. No, it won't allow us to do that. It has to, when clicking test workflow. So it won't trigger off of a Mailgun. I wonder if we could set up a webhook. We'll come back to that. So one of the things that's nice about make.com is they have these mail hooks. So you have, when you create a new scenario, you can set up a webhook as a trigger, or you can set up a mail hook as a trigger. And I think the mail hooks, mail hook being like an email hook, meaning you can set this up to run trigger off of an inbound email. And I think that's super powerful. So mail hook is right here. And when you set up that node type, you can just create a new one and just, I will name it whatever, my test mail hook. And what it does is it just gives you an arbitrary email address that you can send an email to that will trigger that scenario. Really great feature. A really powerful feature. It gives you a lot of flexibility. Just letting the Discord know that I'm live again. So the cool thing about this is that I've seen some people, what they'll do is they'll forward their emails into like a workflow scenario, ChatGPT or something like that. Daniel says the problem is that email is slow. For my particular use case, this is completely async, so I don't care about the timing of this. In my use case, the problem I was trying to solve is that when a booking comes in, because I have an online booking calendar, folks can just book in with me anytime they want to. Um, and so when that booking comes in, I wanted to set up an agent that would do a little bit of research on that particular client if I hadn't worked with them. So there's a few steps there, right? Um, if the email comes in, the first logic step is like, is this a business domain? If it's just a Gmail domain, I'm probably not going to be able to find out much about the person if I just start to do, quote unquote research on them. But if it's a business domain like, joesplumbing.com, then I can have an agent pull that up or do some research. And we looked at web scrapers and different stuff like that. So this is a completely an asynchronous process that I wanted to happen. And actually, we have a whimsical graph for this. Let's go have a look at that. And I thought just today what we do is tie into n8n a little bit because there's some cool features in there. It's not this one. Let's see. Personal assistant. This one looks incomplete, so it's not that one. Not Silver Cove. This one here. Yeah. This was sort of the workflow here. Is if an email came in on a booking, right? Then the workflow would be triggered here. The personal assistant would be sort of activated, and then it would have access to a function that could go and do some crawling on the client website. That would be in make.com. This is a completely different scenario. And so one of the things that I think is interesting about using n8n is that in make.com, these have to be separate scenarios, but I think in n8n you could sort of combine multiples of these. Like you could have multiple triggers. And I see that, one of the things that I saw in some of the videos is like the ability to have multiple triggers on a workflow and the ability to sort of manage how you test those workflows really nicely, which is something that I think is cool. Wet Salt, do you think that AI automations will die out with AI agents? No, I think quite the opposite. The thing is that you can't just let AI agents run autonomously without keeping an eye on things, because there's multiple sides to it, right? How much risk is involved? What's the complexity of the scenario? We were talking about this yesterday on the live. If you think about the little problems or the little decisions that you make in your day-to-day when you're just doing your day job, right? Whatever your day job might be, the little decisions you make moment to moment, given the information that you have within a task or within a process. There's decisions baked in there that you don't even think about. You just sort of have internalized because you're so used to making those decisions. Sort of like driving a car. If you drive, or riding a bike, you don't think about pedaling. You don't think about the turns that you make. You just sort of, especially if you are on a commute or something, you drive the same drive every day. You don't think about turning the corners. You don't think about, having to stop at the red lights and go at the green lights. You don't think about any of those things. Because you sort of internalize them. Number one, those are sort of, once we start building out actual business processes with AI systems or automation systems, and we use AI to make decisions in those systems, the thing is that the problem with AI is that the risk, right? You understand the risk of the decisions you're making. If somebody comes to you and they ask you to make a decision, you instinctively know if it's like fairly low risk, maybe you just make that decision and you just move on with the task. But if the consequences of your decision is very high risk, if the consequences of your decision is that it could have a big impact across the company or something like that, you're going to take your time and think about it. You're going to talk with people. You're going to do all that kind of stuff. One of the problems with AI agents or AI, any of this AI stuff is that AI doesn't understand the difference between low risk decisions and high risk decisions. It just sort of moves on with the highest probability thing. It doesn't contemplate things, right? So there are lots of scenarios where we're just not going to let AI run loose because it's going to do a horrible job. It's going to make a mess. Then we're going to have to be able to get in there and figure out what went wrong if we want to try and improve that, right? So I hope that was a really long answer. Thanks for, it's good to see you again there, Wet Salt. Great question. Duncan says, is there any benefit to a mail hook instead of a Gmail integration? I don't want my scenario hooked up to my Gmail, for one. I don't want all of my emails to go in. I want a mail rule in my mail account that only forwards specific emails. And in a, yeah, and I might want to selectively forward things manually. So I don't want to just send everything in. You could integrate if you wanted to. There's security concerns. I don't want it connected to my Gmail account, but you could. Can you tell? So Stefan says, can you tell a little bit about your way into AI? How do you get all of your knowledge? Um, uh, Zero Cools. I'll come back to your question in a minute. Yeah, I'll come back to that. There's a debate there. So my most of my knowledge is just from experience, just from having been in the software industry for a long time. And so automation was a part of my job then in the industry. I would do a lot of automation for teams and for businesses using slightly different tools, but all of the principles are the same. And then AI, I mean, there's an unlimited amount of information out there. If you're interested in AI right now, um, sort of consume content that is related to your area of interest, and then couple that with practice building out things, find out what works and what doesn't. Um, Zero Cool says, Zero Cool says I'm wrong about AI and that, o1 and DeepSeek are reasoning models. I don't trust AI inherently. They are implicitly flawed because they're non-deterministic. We talked about this yesterday. Um, AI models, LLMs, and all AI systems are wrong. Have a more than 0% probability of being wrong about any given problem, and that number will never be zero, or at least not for a very long time. LLMs run on probability, and so a simplistic way of thinking about that um, is sort of like the automated what do you call that? When you autocomplete, the sentence, you keep pressing the button in the middle you send a text message and you just pick the button in the middle, you come up with a funny sentence, right? LLMs are based on basically weightings and vectors, and what they're doing is they're trying to predict the next thing. And even in these quote unquote reasoning models, okay, you're getting into like deeper and deeper and deeper levels of complexity, and there's still a degree of possibility that they're wrong. So the reason that we're building these more complicated reasoning models is because we want to give them more complicated problems. But the thing about complicated problems is as soon as the problem is more complicated, the risk is probably also higher. And so this whole AI ecosystem that we're all using right now is 100% experimental. It's all an experiment. There's nothing deterministic about any of it. So all of these AI agents and o1 and all that stuff, use it, experiment with it. If it solves a use case for you really well, do that. Just be mindful that it will go wrong. You will need to go in there and fix something. And with o1 and all of this other stuff, if you use these models every day, right? If you use them every day, regardless of the research, if you actually use these models every day, you know what's wrong with them. You know how they aren't solving these problems anytime soon. Right? Do they solve problems? Sure. Do I use AI every day? Absolutely. Will I give AI systems my most riskiest highly complex problems? No. No. Break them down into small problems, lower the complexity, lower the risk. You'll have a better time with AI. Anybody who ever comes along and says, no, AI is going to take our jobs, AI is going to solve all our problems, AI is going to take over the world, it's like they're not using it. AI is not going to do any of those things, not anytime soon. Real Dewey says most of my coworkers are deterministic as well. That's another conversation, isn't it? That's true. There's bigger problems here. In any organization, if you have people that are out of alignment with the direction that the company's moving in, right? If people don't understand why they're there, if people don't feel empowered to make decisions or take risks in their jobs, then yeah, I mean, there's tons out there that's non-functioning or dysfunctional organizations, but AI is not going to fix that. You throw AI into the mix, it's just going to make things worse. if you have alignment on things, you have a direction, you have a goal, you know how to measure when you're done, when you get there, right? And then you can give small problems to a system that can make decisions. One of the best things you can do with AI, especially if you're coding, is write tests, right? And then if you have an agentic framework or system that has access to those tests and knows how to run them and can tell when it's getting better and getting worse, then yeah, you can do really great things with that. But how do you write tests for things like, you know, a high level business strategy? Super hard to do, right? That's where, you know, we call this O1 and whatnot, like reasoning models, quote unquote, reasoning models. But again, they're still only, they can only think within the biases of the model that they've been, the system that they've been trained on. And they always veer back towards the most probable answer, the most generic answer. So it's, again, a few more questions here. I do not accept interns. Sorry. I do have a Discord though, just a small group. If you're interested in learning more about automation and whatnot, need some help with the projects you're working on. Think about, you know, consider jumping in there. It's a small group of people right now, but interested in helping each other out in their automation journeys. Stefan asked, do you offer courses for AI newbies, or do you only do implementation? I do some stuff on my TikTok, obviously, where I post some sort of tutorial-ish stuff. I've been been thinking about doing a general type course. I'm not quite sure where to get started with that, or if it will be worth putting it, you know, the effort into. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll do a couple and see how it goes, but it's one of those things where you could sink, you know, 3 months into building up this course and nobody ever uses it. Zion says, where would you recommend to learn to code? I would recommend, if you wanted to learn coding, there's lots of, I would find it like a course if that works for you. Maybe Khan Academy or Skillshare or something like that. Or maybe find there's lots of those, what was that game? If you can, if that's your style, find a game where you have to program to get through the different levels. I think my brother was learning Ruby or something. With I can't remember what it was called, but whatever works for you. There's tons of resources out there, YouTube, and then I would say just try and write something. I think like low level or sort of entry level data science stuff. Like I think getting into some of that is a really great way to learn how to code a little bit, right? Pulling down some open data from, you know, your city or your state or your province, wherever you live, and just playing with the data and learning some of the libraries and stuff. And then look into something like Cursor, like, or use Claude or ChatGPT to write code for you and study, not just to generate code and not really look at it, but like study what it wrote and why, right? Read the description of, like, it'll give you a breakdown usually, whichever model you're using will be like, these are all the different parts and what they do. Like I use AI to learn code, and I've been in software for 25 years. I've written code my whole career, but I use Cursor and LLMs to generate code to learn languages or, you know, systems that I haven't touched before. So it's using AI can be a great way because it'll spit something out that's probably working, but then you can also sort of interact with it and be like, why did you do this? Or what does this do? Right? That's a great way to do it. So Lego says, or vice versa, make AI write tests if you currently lack them. Absolutely. And that's actually one of the best use cases for AI that for me is like walking into systems that don't have tests, especially if the system's complicated. Yeah. And you know, you need to like refactor a little bit of stuff or whatever. Getting tests in place, because testing can be hard. You still need to read the tests. You still need to make sure the tests make sense. That's one of the things about, again, those people come in, they're like, oh, O1's going to solve all their problems. It's like, no, you've never had, like, even O1 loses the plot. It'll start putting things in there that just don't make sense. You still have to sort of be the voice of reason in the room. You have to be the gray matter. You have to bring the gray matter. Real Dewey says, in my honest opinion, reasoning models just add extra steps to the garbage in, garbage out paradigm LLMs follow. And I agree with that. They're useful for lots of contexts. And again, if you can keep the problem small, if you can give an LLM really good context, keep the decision or the problem really small, you'll have a great time. And then if it's low risk, run with it. If it's high risk, make sure you're checking the results. The Discord link is broken on my link tree. Okay. I'll update that. I might have expired, but I see a couple people just jumped in, so it should be working. Um, I'll go double check. All right. Lego says I should really start combining my note taking with AI. Where to start? Great question. I'd have to think about that. Let's see. Lego says I just keep basic Markdown and Obsidian right now. I think you can feed those Markdown files. Obsidian must have a plugin for this, but feed those Markdown files into a vector DB, or even just like a custom GPT or something. You could automate that process every time you created a new file or updated a file. It like updated, um, it went right into your vector DB, and then was tied to some kind of chat bot or something. So you could have conversations with your document. There's tons of systems out there that are doing this right now, right? Like you can build this in a thousand different ways. What Salt says, if you had to create a chat bot for all social media, say Meta, and a website with a human handoff, what would you use? If I had to create a chat bot for social media and a website with a human handoff. So you've got hey, sorry, just let me, Wetzel, I'll come right back to that. Lego, if you're looking at vector DBs, if you use custom GPTs and you upload files into custom GPTs, it uses a vector DB under the hood. If you use assistants, you can sort of manage that vector DB. But if you're using like Postgres, there's a million systems out there, but just start simple. Alfred, to come back to your question in a minute. Wet Salt says, if you had to create a chatbot for all social media and a website with a human handoff, what would you use? If it was really simple, I'm using a system right now called High Level, which I really like. You just build out a simple site and create a live chat bot on there. If it gets more complex, I'd probably use something like maybe VoiceFlow for the web chat side of things. You have a lot of options. Keep it simple though. Start simple. For website building, I really use a system called Framer. It is a paid service, but they have a lot of really nice designs, and you can get up and running really quickly. Alfred says, as a software engineer, I keep hearing people outside the field saying that AI will take my job. I think the best way I've heard this said, and I would agree with, people using AI will take your job. If you should be using AI in your day to day, if you're a software engineer right now, you should understand what it's good at and what it's not good at. Using something like Cursor, and I know there's a few tools out there right now, but Cursor immediately makes me more productive in terms of it will churn out more code. It'll churn out lots of the wrong code, or it'll just do the wrong thing. Or if you're using, you have to be really specific with like making sure that it understands that you're working with a specific library, and it'll just do weird things. So you have to keep an eye on things. You have to work incrementally. You have to use good version control so you can walk forward, walk backwards. But just for like making some changes or spitting up a project or something, I use Cursor day to day for like writing Chrome extensions. I write, 2 Chrome extensions a week just to do something that I want to do, just to save me some time. That's not to say there aren't scenarios where I'm using Cursor or something and it's just getting it wrong over and over and over and over and over again. I'll spend 2 hours pulling my hair out. So it still goes off the rails completely and is a pain in the butt sometimes. But there are other times where it just does like magical things and it actually makes me quite a bit more productive. So there are trade-offs. I think overall there was a study recently about AI and software, since the release of ChatGPT, and the study overall said that across the large companies, large software companies that they surveyed, the companies weren't any more productive using AI at all. They had produced a ton more code, and they produced a ton more pull requests. They'd also produced a ton more bugs, right? Because people were just relying on the AI. They weren't actually reading the code. They weren't making sure that it did what it was supposed to do. So you still have to use it like a tool, right? You have to use it as a thing to make you more productive. But you still, you have to be the gray matter. You have to bring the smarts. More comments. Ian says, if you were a junior dev, what price would you pick for basic functionality for smaller local businesses? I don't quite understand the question. What are you selling? What are we pricing? Fill me in there, Ian. Alfred says, have you gotten any ML certificates or college degree, or are you just self-learning? I'm entirely self-learned. I'm a generalist. My background is I was just good at computers, and I've always just sort of been in tech. I never went to college, university for software. I fell into it in the late 90s, and I never even then when people first started paying me to do stuff on the web, which was like building really basic websites and stuff, I still didn't take it seriously as a job. I still didn't take it seriously. Um, it wasn't until we were actually making real, like actual, like more money. I mean, back then I was a kid, so like $1,000 was a lot of money. But when we had like a $5,000 and $10,000 contract to do stuff, I was like, wow, this is actually a thing. So my entire career in software has been just like continually leveling up. Whenever I run into a piece of tech and I don't understand what it does, and again, I'm a generalist, so you don't have to do it this way. This is just the way I work. If I run into something and I don't know what it is or I don't know what it does, I go in and I read or understand just enough, just so I know what it is. And then if it seems useful to what I'm doing, then I will dive into it and tinker with it. I'm a professional tinkerer. That's what I do. But the term I prefer is generalist. Wet salt, that didn't work too well for me. Claude Cursor. So user 1603 says Claude Cursor can build me this in one query. Okay, good luck with that. Uh, your name's hilarious. I'm not going to say it on the live. You think n8n is better than Make? I think they serve different purposes. They do different things. They can do the same job in a lot of ways. Um, but there are things that I think Make.com is really good at that n8n doesn't do or can't do. And there are things that n8n does that Make.com doesn't do or can't do. We were just talking about that, right? Like, for instance, I love this feature, the mail hook in Make.com. It just gives you an arbitrary email address that you can send an email to, and that will kick off a workflow. And so that's something that I was just looking at n8n, and I'm like, they don't have a mail hook. You have to integrate with some third party in order to. It says email trigger, but it's an IMAP trigger, so you have to connect with a specific account, right? So it has to be tied to your Gmail or some other inbox. Whereas the make.com gives you an email address you can just forward emails to, and it's such a fantastic feature. Oh, okay, so Ian says, if you were a junior dev, what price would you pick for the basic functionality for smaller local businesses like freelance building websites for them? I've heard many prices which are fair, but I'm unsure. So first of all, if you're going to build them a website and you're using a tool, I would be using a tool like Framer or maybe Wix, or yeah, you could be WordPress, I guess, something like maybe High Level or something. I would be perfectly open and honest that you were just like starting out and that you were building it quick. I might even have something put together to show them up front and just be like, this is what I can do. Do you want to talk about it? And then I've seen people start. I wouldn't go for less than about $1,000. You got to make it worth your time, right? Be clear with them that you're still learning, but you can, move quickly, you learn quickly, and you want to make sure that they get a really good result, right? And then because I know, when you're a professional in the field, if you're a web designer, professional web designers are not building websites for 1,000. They're probably starting at about 3 to 5,000. So if you start in that 1,000 to 1,500 and you find businesses that are willing to pay that, you can get a good start that way. But again, just be upfront that you're just starting out, you're just looking for some whatever. You may even want to do the first website or a couple if you can put them together really quickly, and just again at a discount with the agreement that they'll give you a referral or two if they're happy with it. Like there's a few different ways you could do that, but just be upfront about that you're starting out, and that's why it's so cheap. Benny says, how much do you make annually? Depends. So I was when I was working for another company in the U.S., then I was making along the realm of what would be commensurate for like a senior software engineer in the valley kind of thing. So about industry rates. It depends. Canada and the U.S. are in a different place now. I know that in Canada, our senior software rates are quite a bit lower. And the other thing is what the industry calls senior. It's a whole mess. I kind of actually don't want to talk about it. But I make enough to pay my rent and feed my kids. Yinka says, What roles do you see opening? Um, Great question. I think, man, that's a great question. Uh, Let me think about that. I think in some ways we're seeing a lot of roles opening in sort of in terms of companies and things. It depends on if you want to go the realm of like just working for another company, or if you're doing the side hustle thing and like starting your own business, right? There's a lot of opportunity both ways. The roles in terms of working for other companies, I think one of the problems we're seeing is that companies are sort of wanting to replace people with AI, which is problematic. So I think you can probably guarantee that you should be spending some time learning about AI and how it works. The more skilled you are at things like prompt engineering, if you understand how agents work and like you have some experience, also, level up with things like make.com, Airtable. Can you connect the pieces together? Can you build simple automations? Like I think you can provide a lot of value to a lot of different businesses if you can do these things. Sort of like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, every job that you looked at, um, every single job you looked at required that Excel or like Microsoft Office, right? Um, you needed to know how to run a spreadsheet and maybe do simple formulas and stuff. I think automation is a little bit the same nowadays. And like ChatGPT, you need to know a little bit. You should, if you do know a little bit, like that'll go a long way. That'll go a long way in your career. Yeah. Sustainable says, is this an AI agent? We're just tinkering. We're comparing. I was going to have a look at n8n today and try and tinker with this. The first thing I was trying to do, I might actually have to set up this mail hook. I was complaining that make.com gives us this really great mail hook, which is the ability to it's just an email address we can just send an email to. Let's just test this out. I'm going to copy this email. One second here. Copy that, save that. What we're going to do is just set up a variable here, not get variable, we'll set variable. One second. Delete this, and then tools, set variable, and we'll just call this test, and it's going to be the, I don't know, email address. So I'll just save and run this for a second here. If I click run once, then that mail hook will listen. I'm going to go up to my work email, and I'm going to, I'll just send this email in there. This is a test. It's off screen, so you can't see it. This is a test. Send. And so I just sent an email to that email address from my inbox. And I mean, it should come in any minute. We'll just let it run, see what happens. Yinka says, so what roles do you opening, or what roles do you recommend people get into this with this coming economy? I think you should, learn some AI, learn some automation if it makes sense for you. I think critical thinking will always be something that we need. Look, and I mean, I know this doesn't apply everywhere. We're a little. I'm in Canada, so we're a little bit behind. Maybe the U.S. and what's going on there. I think there's lots of things that aren't. If you're struggling right now, and I mean, this probably isn't. This is just sort of my sense of things. If you're concerned about job security or something like that right now, I don't think it's a bad thing to learn some of these new tools that are coming out. There's a lot of hype around voice agents and things like that. If you know how to program a voice agent, you can probably do a good side hustle. If you know how to do a little bit of agent building in something like n8n, like you can do a little bit of a side hustle or offer value to the company you're working for. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to think about that, but definitely probably it would be worth understanding some AI and some automation stuff. That's sort of where everything's at right now. Ian Gotcho, do you think a month would be too? No, a month. Do you think a month would be too long for a website? Still sort of slow. No, but but you shouldn't be writing it from scratch. Like if you're writing in an HTML or something like that, I would recommend look into a no-code tool like Framer, or even use Wix or something, and then just charge them a retainer to maintain it every month. $100, $200, whatever they can afford. They'll go much too higher than that unless you're actually offering, a service. Data jobs. Benny says data jobs. That's actually a good point too. If you're good with data, I think there's a little bit of if you're, and I mean, there's a lot of different ways things might be going, but yeah, data is another good one. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Soul says, do you think operator is going to be connected to make? Maybe. I haven't played with operator. I looked at it. It looks interesting. Um, I think you can already connect your Chat GPT to make with webhooks. So I don't see why you couldn't. Give it actions and stuff it could do. Warren T says, "Have you used DeepSeek?" Not really. I've watched. I look at it. Look, one of the things is that and I tell people this all the time. I'm not looking for a smarter LLM. GPT-4, even 4 mini, does everything I need for the most part. I don't need a smarter LLM because I don't give really hard problems to my ChatGPT or to my LLMs. I don't need a smarter. Maybe for coding and stuff, like something that would sort of not lose the plot quite so much. But I don't need a smarter model. I like cheaper, faster. Yeah, definitely those things. But I mean, if you got $10, you can process a ton of stuff with ChatGPT, like a lot, like thousands and thousands and thousands of records. So, so even like cheaper is not a big deal. If you get into millions, maybe that makes sense. But typically, for most of the stuff I'm doing, like GPT-4 is lots. It does everything I need. Um, what is a webhook? I have a video on that in my profile. A webhook is just a URL that you can hit when you create a webhook. If you hit the URL, if you like, you can even open it in a browser. And what it'll do is it will trigger a scenario. So we can create a new scenario here. One second. Let's just rename this so I don't. So this is a mail hook example. Just try and name these things because I end up with so many empty scenarios in my. So if we go in and just make a brand new scenario here, and we'll create a mail hook, sorry, a webhook, custom webhook. So now I'll just create a new one and we'll just call this demo webhook. Won't worry about IP restrictions right now. So if I zoom in there, you can see that it gives me this address. It gives me this URL, okay? And it's listening right now. So right now, if this scenario was set up to do something, it's listening because it's trying to determine what the incoming data is going to look like. But I can just open this in a browser, paste the URL in and visit that. And now that webhook's been satisfied, right? Successfully determined. Now there's no data because I didn't send any data in. I just visited it in the browser, but you could easily send data in here. So that's all a webhook is. It's a URL that will trigger a scenario for you. In other systems, webhooks are really great because if you work with third-party systems like Stripe, Shopify, ShipStation, there's all kinds of things. Let's just look at Shopify for a second. So if you own a Shopify shop and you want to integrate Shopify with some other system, then Shopify has webhooks built in. And here's actually a perfect example of why webhooks are important. So here, if you had your own custom app or something, or this is your service over here, and you wanted to know, their example here is you want to know if an order was created. You could use their API and be like, is the order created? And they're like, no. And then you're like, is the order created? And they're like, no. Or yes, right? They call this long polling or continuous polling, where you're just asking over and over again, do you have a new event for me? Do you have a new event for me? And it's like, no, 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 no. And then eventually it's like, yes. Instead of you requesting that from Shopify, you can register a webhook. You create a subscription basically, and then they can just send you the data asynchronously in real time, and your system will just handle it. They'll just beam you a payload and say, hey, new order created, and then your system can just react to it. That's a webhook. It sort of creates this asynchronous infrastructure where instead of you having to be like, it'd be sort of like it's like a notification on your phone, right? When you're like, you want to know if somebody messaged you on TikTok, you can open up TikTok every 5 minutes and check, hey, did I get a new message? No. Hey, did I get a new message? No. And then TikTok's like, hey, do you want to turn on notifications? And they're like, okay. So then your phone buzzes, you get the notification, hey, you got a message. Webhook is just like that. It's a real-time notification that something's happened, except it's some kind of data payload from, maybe Shopify or something. And if you're using Shopify, they have webhooks for everything. All these different events. If an order's created, if a shipping status is updated, if something goes out of stock, something comes into stock. If you want to create custom custom functionality, I guess, around, your shop or something like that. Or, if you're using ShipStation, you could get a webhook that's like tracking, tracking label, shipping label created. Or if you want webhook updates for, changes to your shipping status or something like that. Hope that clarifies things. All right. Um, yeah, Lego says that. So I do have a video in my feed about webhooks. It's in there. Kenny says, definitely not enough critical thinking going on. That's so true. Um, Mansoor says, can you connect ChatGPT to Google Business to auto reply? You mean like a Google Business, like an email, like an inbox? Mansoor, is that what you mean? You could. I'd kind of recommend against just having ChatGPT. I mean, you could auto reply to some stuff. Depends on your risk appetite and what are you auto replying to? Like, is it just is it are these leads? Are you trying to qualify some leads or something like that? Do you want your auto reply to just auto reply? What if your most important client emailed you? Would you want ChatGPT to auto reply to that? Maybe not, right? I think you want to sort of narrow down what exactly you want that to do and kind of start there. But yeah, you could. Uh Clueless Nerd says, I am a Cobalt expert. I will always be in demand. You, my friend, are on the other end of the spectrum. You're on the other end. You're on the place where you're on the end of the spectrum where there are so few of you that you will probably, yes, always be in demand because some of those systems will never change. A legacy system that will always need some kind of maintenance. Yeah, that's like it's kind of like there's still major systems out there in like Perl, right? If you know Perl, there's still work out there. Sorry, I had some comments come in on YouTube and I missed them. I'm streaming on multiple platforms. I apologize for missing those comments. I got to keep an eye on too many different spots here to see what's going on. Kenny says data analysis is saturated right now, but data engineering is needed bad. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yep. Benny Benefius. I'm just going to call you Benny. I hope that's okay. I see a comment. Tarlin came in. Tarlin, I'll come back to your comment in just a second. Your question there. Benny says the smart aspect of GPT is mostly for doctors, PhD people, teachers. It's good for whatever you use it for, if it works for you, right? Benny says I'm a data analyst and is extremely in demand, to be honest. Yeah, okay. Kate Trell says, what is your prompt engineering outline? Is there such a thing as a standard prompt template? So I end up with multiple templates, sort of, because if I'm dealing with text, something I want text output, then I'll have like I have like a bunch of sort of chunks that end up in all of my prompts. I think prompt management is something that OpenAI could definitely do better. You kind of get one box, but I just have all of these little bits that kind of end in. Like if I want something to be in a specific format, I have a specific chunk of a prompt that I want in there. Make sure this is in Markdown. This is the way I want it, right? And I use a couple of different frameworks to design prompts. And then usually there's a link in my bio, one of my free tools called a Power Prompt Generator, which works pretty good for my purposes. I'm actually still waiting for feedback on that. If anybody's had a hard time with it. But then I run everything through that to sort of, has instructions to sort of make everything concise and consistent, and it cleans things up. And I've had pretty good luck with that. So, all right. I'm just about caught up on my comments. Mansoor said review replies. So review replies for something like Google business reviews or like Yelp reviews or something like that. Yeah, you could definitely do that. Yeah, just to have something. And then I would still, I would even go one step further and have some sentiment analysis. So if a review comes in and the sentiment was poor, like they were mad or something, I'd let somebody know, hey, go and reply to this manually. User 5287 says, how do I make a virtual receptionist connected to my booking site? I mean, there's a few different ways you could do that. how are people contacting your booking site? Is the are they calling in? Are they do you need like a live chat? Is this coming in over email? There's a lot of different ways you could kind of go about that. There's tons of systems out there. Mansoor says, my question was, can we auto reply to Google My Business reviews from ChatGPT? So I would find a system that does auto reply for you. There's quite a few out there. Like I know, well, for sure, High Level does that, right? You can set up auto reply, write your own sort of AI thing to reply. I'm sure there's other systems out there that just do that. They'll just auto reply to your Google Business reviews. Um, yeah. User 528 says phone calls. That's all the rage right now. Inbound voice with AI agents is kind of the thing right now, and there's lots of stuff out there. You can do that with High Level. You can do that with, let's see, Voice Flow will take phone calls. What are some other systems that's doing the inbound voice right now? Folks, help me out. I hear lots about Vappy, but I think it's more of a dev tool. You need to sort of write something yourself. I think there's like lots of stuff out there right now that'll handle phone calls for you, right? If you want something that's just kind of turnkey, like that seems to be where the industry's at right now is voice related stuff. Yeah. Reach out if user 528. If you want a hand with that, feel free to reach out. We do this kind of work for companies all the time. So happy to at least give you some pointers in the right direction. All right, Tarlin, getting back to your question to YouTube. How do you ensure data consistency in microservices? The short answer to that is testing, right? Really good testing. You need to make sure that all of the different pieces of your system have appropriate tests in place so that they are returning the exact structure that you are expecting between all of those things. Microservices are just APIs. And what is an API? It's a contract with the outside world. An API, it was like, what is an API? Well, it's where you get data from a third party or you push data into a third party. It's like, okay, that's fine. That's what an API is used for. But what an API is, application programming interface. It's a contract. Here's how you can get data in and out of our system. And it will, when you start using it, the thing about an API is that it will always be the same. An API will always, because if you got 100,000 users using your API and you make a change in there, you broke things for 100,000 people, right? So an API is a contract. So you need to make sure that if you're building APIs, that your contracts are sound, and you do that through testing. Hope that answered your question. If that didn't, just drop another comment in there. I'll get back to it. Hey, what is this? This is just a chart that I put on the screen because we were chatting about. So this is actually the thing. I don't know that I can do this in n8n. I was going to look at n8n today. So this was sort of the graphic or the diagram of an agent I was working on a couple weeks ago on the live. And I know I could do this part in make.com, this booking email part. And then we started to build this personal assistant part out in a make.com scenario. This is the scenario not this one. Let me see. It was very overly simplistic. We hadn't really gotten anywhere with it, right? So let's see here. My personal assistant, this one. It was very basic. It was very naive. It was just a custom OpenAI assistant that had access to like a couple actions, right? And so, but I've seen in n8n, and this is something I wanted to play with. Let's just add a webhook to get started. I'll worry about configuring that later. They have this, where is it in here? AI agent. I keep seeing this and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. You can you connect a chat model and then you connect memory and then you can start to add various tools on there. And I'm like, this is cool. Because this whole node right here sort of encapsulates a bunch of the stuff that I've been building out manually. And I was slow. I'm slow on the uptake sometimes just because, again, we talked about this earlier in the live here. Like my entire career has been just like trying out different tools just in time, learning things just in time to sort of know enough to do what I need to do. I'm a generalist. That's my day job. It's what I do. I've been programming long enough that I'm reasonable. I'm a mediocre software engineer. I'm good at testing. I'm very good at testing because I've focused on that heavily in the last decade and a half of my career. testing and then security, um, disaster recovery, all this DevOps-y type stuff. Um, but I'm slow to uptake new things because there are so many things out there. If I made a promise to myself when I ran into new tools, especially early in my career, when I didn't know what SQL was, or if I didn't know what a function was in SQL, I would go find out, what does this do? So at least I knew. It didn't mean I was going to use it, or if it looked like I should be using it, then I would. But the problem with that is there are so many new tools coming out nowadays, and it's been like this for a long time. It's almost impossible to keep up. It's impossible to keep up with everything that's out there. It's just super, super challenging. So yeah, that's part of the reason why I've been a little bit slow on the uptake with n8n. I've known it's going to probably do a bunch of stuff I want to do. Again, like I was saying before, you can set up, not even sure how, but I saw somebody else do this where they actually set up a second trigger. This is a trigger node. Can I just arbitrarily add another? Whoop, not a sticky note. That's not what I want. And I like actually, I like the way that they allow you to organize things in here too. So let's do trigger. Let's see if we can add a second webhook. Yeah, so this is really cool. You can just have like multiple webhooks that sort of come into the same thing. I think this is a really fantastic feature because this covers a scenario or a use case in make.com that's hard to do and is really annoying, in that if we have this scenario, let's say this one here, in make.com, and we've set up some situation, but then suddenly we want to test it. Let's say that this isn't a webhook, but it's a Google Drive. We now have to disconnect it from Google Drive or keep dropping the file. We have to sort of jump through different hoops in order to like test this out, and it's a little bit frustrating. But having multiple triggers in a scenario is immediately useful. I've seen other features of n8n that they do that allow you to that allow that, you know, the way they test things or allow to retest nodes and things like that. So I think there's a bunch of features in here I'm really going to like. Just going to get back to my comments in a second. Just get that out of the way. Here, my mic clipping, so I'm going to just adjust that a tiny bit. Bring that back just the tiniest bit there. All right, get caught up on my questions again. Oh, Tarla, nice your comment there. I usually handle it with gRPC. Is this considered best practice? It's not that it's not a bit, yeah, like definitely do that. It helps you set up a framework for making those remote calls, right? But again, make sure you have good tests in place. Like you need to sort of have assertions in place to make sure that all of the pieces you say are available in terms of the procedure calls, and like what you can pass into them and what you get back is not changing. That's the part that you need to have in place, right? And if you're talking about, I mean, when you say the words data consistency, that can go a few different directions, right? Are we talking about like data consistency in terms of like the replication of data, or are you just talking about the data structure? Let me get back to my TikTok comments here. Let's see. Newman217 says, just learning SQL, does this help? I think it's good to know a little SQL. It's useful in a lot of different scenarios. I think it's important to know a few different database systems. With SQL, if you're into that, then you can, you know, if you're doing a little bit of data science, or you're looking at caching, or you're looking at just playing with data offline and you're using SQLite or Postgres. I mean, these are all just something like SQL can apply in lots of different places, even though there's going to be different flavors. Depends on your use case. But again, if you're just leveling up, then it's never a bad thing. Mustafa says, what would you say is the best certification in data industry to get? I can't answer that question because I'm not certified in anything data related. Maybe somebody else in the chat can chime in on that. El says, why get a certification? I sort of agree with that. If getting a certification helps you, that can give you a path in terms of like what you probably should know, or what the industry says you should probably know. If that sort of gives you a roadmap in terms of what to do, you know, a progression, that's not a bad thing. But yeah, I also agree on the other side of that. Like, you probably don't need it. I don't have a university degree. I don't have any certifications in software, and I've been in the industry for 25 years. Does it matter? I think the university degrees, I think they're still good if they give you a path, but that's not to say that there's two sides to it, right? because I never learned algorithms. I never learned big O. I never really dove into, data structures. I've always felt like that piece of my knowledge was missing because I never went to university for these things, what we'd call fundamentals, right? And so I studied those later in my career where I'm like, I think I just need to know this. I'd considered going to back to, or like taking university many times over my career just to go back and pick up those pieces. And instead, what I did was I just studied the things that I was missing. Yeah. I'm still horrible at algorithms, but I get how they work now. L says there's also flow type, and that's been mentioned a few times. So my question for you, we looked at this on almost every live that I've been on recently. I think it was flow type AI, flow wise, That's the one. I think that's what you mean, right? Flow wise. I've only looked at it. It's been mentioned on a couple of my lives. My first question is always like, what problem does it solve? Is it just like a better workflow builder? One of the things that I think that's cool about n8n that I haven't had a chance to play with is they do have, here, I'll just add it here, but I think they have like a live chat, right? They have like a chat trigger, so you can actually have a live chat. I think this is something you can actually host. You can plug it into your site, maybe. I don't know. There's a bunch of things in here that I want to come in and play with because they have a lot of cool functionality built in. Direct integrations with like Postgres and doing some of the RAG stuff. Like, yeah, there's some fun stuff in n8n that I definitely need to dig into. Trash Golf says, can this be used with .py with Python files? I mean, in what sense? Do you want to be able to run Python in the workflow? I think you can just run code, JavaScript or Python. Yeah. That's another thing that's hard to do. This is actually a really cool feature that's really hard to do well, not hard to do. If you want to do this in make.com, you want to run some Python, you need like Zero Code Kit, or there's another one. What's the JavaScript one called? Zero Code Kit or 1001 Effects, execute JavaScript. It's annoying that to run JavaScript in this, you need to, they do have a custom JS. Yeah, so this must be fairly new because they didn't have this not that long ago, I think. But to be able to execute inline JavaScript is helpful, but Python too. Potatoes says, I have a CPA, but enjoy coding with Python and automation. What is a good career? So I think we're always going to need CPAs, just like we're always going to need. I know people are saying. I heard somebody recently say that AI is going to take over bookkeeping. I don't know if that's entirely true. There's some things that you'll always need. Like, can you account for the numbers in an automated way? Sure. But then if you think about, instead of just like bookkeeping, if you think about like operational accounting, what's the point? The point is that you are interpreting the numbers to give yourself an idea of where the business is going and what decisions you should be making about things, right? And I'm sure AI systems will be able to make those recommendations, but it's one of those things where it's like, what's the risk? If something's high risk, okay, I'll just maybe pull up my picture here. This is my really basic, what I call a risk and complexity framework. If something is high risk or high complexity or both, I'm going to be very, especially if it's in this top quadrant, high risk, high complexity, I'm very cautious with AI, right? So if it's low risk, low complexity, absolutely, you should be probably using AI there as much as you possibly can. But if it's low risk, high complexity, we should look at those tasks and try to make those lower complexity if we're able. As soon as we get into the high risk side of things here, we want to be cautious. So when we talk about like accounting, right? That's high risk. We're talking about the numbers, the things that the reason you're in business. So we're going to want to proceed with caution. A person still needs to be in the loop, in my opinion. Others might have different opinions, but my opinion is if it's high risk, you want to be very cautious. Why? Because AI models are just fundamentally non-deterministic, and that won't ever change, or it's not going to change anytime soon. I'm willing to be wrong about that. The day that an LLM is 100% deterministic, I don't think it'll happen because there's just problems are too complex. There's too many variations. The problem with business, the problem with software, the problem with all these things is everything is constantly changing. Everything is constantly changing. And so the models that they're already training now, aside from bias and all of the other problems, are in some ways they're already sort of getting out of date because, right, just even the problem of like, all of these models have a specific cutoff date, right? Anyway, so I think CPA is one of those things that's not going to go away. And if you know a little bit of automation or something like that, then apply it within the industry. There was this book I read a while ago. I don't necessarily agree with all of the principles in the book, but I think it was called like the 4 Hour Work Week. This was like over a decade ago. But one of the things that really sort of made sense to me was the idea of career capital. The idea that if you've got 30 years in the banking industry, it doesn't matter how passionate you are about yoga. Utilize the capital in the industry. You've built capital, career capital in the industry that you're in. You have connections, you have networks, you have reputation, all of those things. And nobody, it doesn't matter how passionate you are about yoga. You're going to have to start from scratch with your yoga business if all of a sudden you give up 30 years of banking to get into yoga. It's not to say that you shouldn't do it, but utilize the career capital that you have to get into the, keep your day job sort of thing, or build on what you have in order to help afford or um, allow for your passion or your interests, if that makes sense. I'm completely misquoting that book, but it was something like that. Elle says, I'm pretty sure n8n only outputs node. Interesting. Danny says, learn AI IDEs. You will see how powerful they are. I use Cursor every day. It's good. Yeah, I switch between the different models, and they still get lots of stuff wrong. I mean, they make me more productive. Like I write, I learned React. I mean, I learned way more about React, which is I tend to sort of end up in these underdog frameworks, Svelte, Aurelia, these sort of oddball frameworks I just really enjoy. I like front end frameworks. So I put off learning React for a long time, and I used Cursor to learn React just in the last few months. I mean, I can get in React and dabble, but it's like, oh, okay, use hook. What does that do? Okay, use this. What does that do? How do you write your own hook? How do you do all of this different stuff? AI is really good for that. Snack Lady says, what resources did you use to study the internet? YouTube. I'm YouTube certified. And then I just tinker. I just experiment. Let me see here. So Elle says, restricting yourself to an AI-specific ID is a bad idea. I use Cursor because it's based on VS Code, and I use Jupyter Notebooks. And so VS Code works really well with Jupyter Notebooks. It already just automatically knows how to read them. And so does VS Code. It just makes me, or so does Cursor. It makes me fairly productive. Kay says, I've been trying to study this. It's so foreign to me, but I want agents for my business. Kay, feel free to reach out. Happy to point you in the right direction. You can just DM me right on TikTok. It can be a lot if there's this thing that, and this is part of what I do for my business. So if there's anybody on the live, my job, so my company's Cloudcraft Software, we basically help bridge the tech gap for companies that know that they want to modernize or systemize things in their business. This is exactly what we do, is help get into some of this stuff. Again, keeping it simple, because some of this, we don't want to, the problem with the thing about any hard problem or any problem at all is that we want to simplify. We want to simplify things as much as possible. So when we put systems in place, we keep them simple. We make sure that people on your team understand what they do, how to run them, and then we can provide support if we need to sort of grow those systems, to expand the functionality, or if something goes wrong and we need to make adjustments, whatever that looks like, because everything changes, right? Business is constantly in flux. Processes can fluctuate, right? So keep it small. There's so much complexity in the world and in businesses, right? Even in your business, there are things that you understand, the time it takes to train people, all of these different things. So if we can simplify that as much as possible, that's sort of the approach that we bring. So yeah, feel free to reach out if that makes sense to you. Solo says, I'm trying to merge my marketing with automation to help my new cleaning business. Yeah, and I think marketing is one of those, there's a ton of stuff in marketing right now. I'm really interested, like I'm seeing people using different systems for like even cold calling. I'm seeing lots of systems for, I think if you're already dealing with a volume, I'm a little bit, I don't want to say that I'm bearish on AI, but I'm cautious on AI. So if you have a busy call center that's struggling to handle the volume of calls you have right now, AI might make sense, like an inbound agent or something. If you've ever, like, this is for TELUS Communications in Canada, who could really benefit from an AI agent for inbound calls, because their systems, their voice systems are so awful. They're just like, they're just so bad. So if you have a really awful inbound system right now, an AI system might be an improvement for your customers. Sorry if that was a little pointed, but if it's an improvement, but if you don't have systems in place, AI might not be the right thing. I would experiment and just be mindful that things are shifting quickly if you don't already have systems in place. The best place to bring AI and automation into your business is if you have established systems that you're trying to optimize, that you're trying to scale, right? But you can't automate something that if you don't understand what that process looks like. Yeah. Yeah, you can just end up with a mess. Um, yeah, so merge marketing with automation. And I would start with a system like maybe high level or something like that, which will bring, and you don't have to use that one in particular. I use it because I enjoy it. It works for what I do. It just brings a bunch of those things into one place and then allows for some of those automations, right? And but you'll want to sort of prove or make sure that those bits are in place, the systems are in place, and then you can start automating the pain points, if that makes sense. Solo, feel free to reach out. Happy to again give you some pointers on this. We do this every day for companies, so reach out. All right, potatoes. Yeah, right on. Glad that was helpful. Class captain, you're right. That's what the book said. Thanks for the feedback. Glings, how much do I need to make this agent? Not a whole lot. This agent doesn't do anything right now. This is a 5-cent agent. We're just sort of tinkering with this right now. The agent that I was working on before, we did this a couple weeks ago. Let me pull it up here. Was we were trying to build out an agent that would do client research for me. So when somebody books in on my calendar, I wanted it to go out and do a little bit of research on, what do these folks do? And there were some conditions in there, and we didn't get as far as I wanted to with it. Basically, when a booking comes in, what I want is that the booking email comes into my inbox, and I want that to be automatically forwarded into, I wanted that to be forwarded into this workflow. And then we were looking at integrating some web crawling tools with the agent, with the custom assistant within ChatGPT or within OpenAI to do the crawling part of it. And so basically that whole workflow sort of looked like this, right? The booking email comes in, and then the personal assistant can kick off this process, which will go and crawl their website. And then once that job comes in, that will end up in a vector database. And you can see there's a few of these bits we didn't get to, the indexing data with the custom assistant. And eventually I want this to be able to handle like meeting transcripts and stuff like that. So it's a little bit, for a couple of reasons, it's just a cool demo project, something we can talk about. We can tinker on the different pieces. But when I get this built, this will save me probably 4 or 5 hours a week. All right, just catching up on comments here. YouTube's looking good. Fiji says, I have a question about automation. How can I automate getting over my ex-girlfriend? Oh, that's a great boy. Fiji, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. They're that workflow is way too complicated. Way too complicated. Sorry to hear about the ex-girlfriend. That could be tough, but I don't know if I have an automation that'll help you out. Maybe send you something inspirational every week, just to be like, send yourself an inspirational quote every day with a nice picture of hiking in the mountains or something. Yeah. I'm doing good. Is it Jesus or Jesus? So I hope I'm saying your name right. Is this IT or network? This is just sort of a conceptual tool that we were working on. And we'd started building this out a little bit in make.com, but I wanted to take a look at n8n because I've been seeing this agent box here for the longest time. And I'm like, that looks really interesting to be able to pick and choose the chat model, or to be able to have some branches in your system where you could potentially have multiple agents that are using multiple models, specifying what memory system you want to use and then giving it access to tools. Um, yeah, it's just something I'm diving into now because I think it'll solve a problem that I'm working on. Tech Audit TV says, have you tested out Xanos's new actions feature for fast automations? I have not. Let's bring that up right now. So, scalable no-code backend. The fastest way to build powerful scalable backend for your app without code. That sounds cool. I was just looking at this the other day. This is what I want to know. What's the pricing? Because this is one of the things that makes, see, we're talking about webhooks, right? If you use a webhook, if you have a webhook, for all intents and purposes, this is the same as an API. So in theory, you could build out an API using make.com. You could have a bunch of API endpoints that do a bunch of work, return some data, trigger different things, because this is effectively representing things that we can do in programming with no code. But the problem with make.com is it's going to get cost prohibitive very, very quickly because you pay for every single operation in make.com. So if you have an operation even that looks like this is only 4 nodes, but this is 4 operations. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So on your $9 plan, you get 10,000 ops. So you only get to run this. So 2,500 API calls, which if you scale it, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you've got a couple hundred users on your project, you're going to be using up your $10 worth of operations every day, right? That's going to get really, really cost prohibitive. So if there was a backend that would let you build out something like this, but it wasn't ridiculously expensive, that would be super cool. Because right now, whenever I build stuff out, I still do it in code. I use serverless platforms in the backend. So just to follow up, Hayden, I'll come back to your comment in just a second. The follow-up Tech Audit TV says they have a thing called actions that you can test without even having an account. Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. So it looks like they do have a little bit of rate limiting, and I think the thing is they're making their money off of like how much data you're storing, perhaps. I would be willing to look into this. The interesting thing is here is that when you jump from, there's probably something in there. I guess when you hit 100,000 records, oh yeah, if you want access to the JavaScript functions and database triggers, you jump up to 85 a month, but that could be worth it. Like I have a couple startup projects where I'd pay 85 bucks a month and they already have their SOC 2 and ISO 27001. So that could be pretty slick. Save us writing a lot of code. It'd be interesting to see what limitations there are in the functionality. But yeah, thanks for the tip. This looks really interesting. I would definitely have a look at it. Hayden says, starting my career in IT, how worth it are certifications? I think it's not a bad thing to, the value in a certification from my standpoint is that it's going to give you a path. It's going to expose you to it's sort of like taking a course. The value part of a certification for me is the course part where you're actually learning the skills. That being said, if you just have a certification and you don't have any experience, the certification is worth a lot less to me. On the flip side, if you have a lot of experience and no certifications, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's me. I don't have any certifications. I've challenged my, I've taken the couple of AWS practice exams and I know I can go get those certifications, but that doesn't stop me from finding work necessarily, but I have a lot of experience in the field. So I would start a balance, right? Just because you have a certification, that means that if you had a certification and you had some practical projects, that actually shows me that you have an interest in that you have like a practical interest and you're not just getting certifications for your resume, right? I want to see that you have experience. Let's see here. Gwen says, how are you? Thanks so much. Oh, what are you? I'm a person. Jono says, how can I make an AI agent? What's your use case or what's your problem, Jono? It's going to depend on what it is you're trying to accomplish. There's a lot of different, like, is it a voice agent? Is it a live chat? Is it an AI agent that's going to, is it like a personal assistant? It's going to book appointments for you, or like, what is it you want to do? There's a lot of different ways. We're looking at this tool called n8n right now, which has AI agent, this really cool AI agent node right here. And we're just kind of taking a peek at this and seeing, like, checking some of the thing about this is already I can tell there's a lot of complexity in here, right? There's a lot of moving parts. So Ursiad, I hope I'm saying that right. Adam says, when to use an AI agent versus RAG. Those things are not mutually exclusive, right? An AI agent can use RAG as one of the tools that it uses to find information. So if we look at what is RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, is simply, instead of saying to your chat GPT, here's everything, every piece of information about my company. What are my policies on XYZ? What are my vacation policies? What retrieval augmented generation does is it takes the keywords vacation policy and it searches against a database, maybe a vector database or keyword database of some kind, and it retrieves the chunks of data that seem relevant to vacation policy, and then it feeds those documents into the prompt. It reduces the scope of the context. So RAG, if you want to start using RAG when you need the agent to be a little bit more deterministic on the decision process, on the outputs. For instance, say a real estate agent, or one that I'm still working on is an AI agent or a live chat for a car dealership, and being able to deterministically, meaning accurately, serve up information about vehicles. You can't just take a spreadsheet of cars and put it into ChatGPT and ask it to tell you whether or not the 23 Prius has leather seats or not. It'll just hallucinate, right? But if you can just feed that car's data into the prompt, and it says leather seats in there, or it doesn't, then the agent will do or the AI system will do a better job, right? Hey, Bobby. Thoughts on Gumloop? Man, Gumloop was mentioned a few lives ago. Remember, we had a look at that. AI there's just automation frameworks coming out of the woodwork. I don't have an opinion on it because I don't know it. I would love to know whenever somebody mentions a new, that looks like I'm logged in. Let me get logged out here. Whenever somebody mentions a new system, then my first question is like, what problem does it solve? Like, is it just the first one that you've used? Does it do something better? Okay, so web scraping. Maybe this is why it came up, is because AI powered web scrape, because we were doing web scraping, a few weeks ago. So this is probably why. I should test it out because it's telling me that my guess is that there's it's an AI wrapper around something. So the first thing I'm going to do is check the pricing. 30,000 credits. What does that get me? I remember looking at a tool the other day where it was like, if I wanted to scrape a web page and extract information in a structured format, that was going to be like 25 credits. And I was like, man, just too expensive. Because I use a lot of scraping. I do a lot of scraping. I have a lot of different systems and I can build scrapers very quickly. So for me, it makes sense to build something. But if you know your use case and it's within your budget, something like this probably makes sense. Because yeah, I would probably get into the hundreds of thousands or millions of credits fairly quickly. And then it's like, this doesn't make sense anymore. But just for something small, maybe. Yeah. Not a great answer, Bobby. Sorry. I haven't really used it, but it'd probably be worth looking at. Jono says, what type of AI agent would be useful for real estate? It depends. So we've had conversations about this recently. One person we talked to recently, they're just have a lot of phone calls that they need to make. They have people interested in properties and they have a call center that's trying to contact all those people, and they just have so much volume. And actually the problem that they mentioned was that they're having trouble with staff, keeping people on board. It sounded like the people they had on board that were doing the job great, they wanted to keep, but they were having turnover. They're having trouble with training. They're having management problems. That could be one. I've done another automation for real estate agent where they wanted a more interesting search. And so the issue that they had was that, for instance, they were selling properties in a specific region. Here I'm in Kelowna, but they wanted to know like if this particular property, say right here, came up, and the region of the world that they're in is very tourist oriented, and so there's a lot of all of the storage units around the lake are full of people's boats because people come and leave their boats there, and then they go home to whatever state they're from. But when they come to that region, they come there for like the summer activity, the lake activities, right? So when they're looking at properties, they want to know how close is that property to this particular marina or this particular storage place? How close is it to this? And then more interesting queries like, I want something close to the creek. I want something with a mountain view. I want something like these searches that are really hard to do with the MLS. So we built a prototype system for them that would use AI to sort of qualify some of these searches, and it worked pretty good. The trick in real estate is getting the data. That's always the hard part. I'm sure there's other real estate automations you could do. I don't know that you need necessarily an AI. See, this is the other thing too, is I don't know that you need an AI agent for everything unless you're interacting with people. Another, simple automation that might make sense for real estate is just like missed call text back. If they miss a phone call, and it automatically sends a text message. Hey, sorry, I missed your call. I'll be right with you. What did you need? Kind of thing. Jono says, could you make an agent who has communication with a seller? In theory, what's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it a negotiation? Are you just reaching out to a lot of, is it cold? You're trying to price match a bunch of stuff? It would sort of depend on, like the answer is probably yes, but like, what are you trying to accomplish? And what do you recommend for AI agents was the next question. And again, there's a lot of options. There are, if you're just starting out, start with something simple. An AI agent, there's lots of tools out there you can play with. If it's an inbound call, you could use something like a high level. There's stuff popping up all over the place. So like, is it a custom AI agent, or is it something that you can just find a turnkey, give it a little bit of information and it could take phone calls? Maybe like a voice flow might work. There's so many tools out there right now that I think you could use almost any of them, because I don't think any of them are doing, I honestly don't think any of them are doing anything magical. They are all just different companies that have different combinations of prompts wrapped around ChatGPT. Yeah, I'm willing to be wrong about that, but that's my current assessment of most of the systems out there. Haman says, why not, or Haman, yeah, says, why not just use Llama? Like I said, I don't need a smarter GPT. I don't need a smarter model. Most of the problems I'm giving to an AI agent or a whatever, I don't need smarter. I don't need more parameters. I don't need more billions of parameters. I don't need a smarter model because that's not my use case. The problems, we talked about this a minute ago, right? We pull this up. This is I try to operate fundamentally in this one corner of this quadrant, this one corner of this framework here. So there are two axes here. On this side is low risk, and on this side is low complexity. So if it's low risk and low complexity, I'm operating here 9 times out of 10. I'm working with things that are low risk, meaning if the AI goes off the rails, it doesn't have a major impact on my scenario. If it's over here and it's high risk, low complexity, I'm trying to de-risk it, or else I'm in the loop. So low risk, high complexity. If it's over here, I'm trying to make it less complex. I'm trying to move it over here. And the same with here. If it's high risk, high complexity, I'm probably not using AI in this situation, or if I am, I'm using it very cautiously, right? I'm trying to de-risk because that's the thing, is that ChatGPT doesn't know the difference between a low risk decision and a high risk decision. It will make the decision the same way either way. Whereas if I give you a problem, it's a low risk problem or a low risk problem, you'll probably just make the decision. High risk problem, you're going to think about it and talk to people. You're going to contemplate it for a while. You're going to ask around. You're going to get advice from experts. ChatGPT and all of these Llama, they will make the decision the same in a low risk scenario as they will in a high risk scenario. And they will still be wrong some of the time. Let's see. Yep, Haman says, sounds like an information retrieval system doesn't always need AI. And I think that's the case. I think AI is good. to experiment with and to use in the scenarios where it makes sense. It makes sense, and there's lots of scenarios where AI makes a lot of sense. If you have low sensitivity documents that you're processing, AI is great for that. If you want to classify data, like do sentiment analysis on a lot of data, again, that's low sensitivity data, meaning it doesn't have phone numbers and birth dates and social security numbers. Great use case for AI. Categorizing data, absolutely works great, right? Most businesses don't need AI, or they don't need that much, I'll say, right? There are probably areas where AI makes sense. What most businesses need are to organize and systemize their processes in which AI can help, right? And if you just throw AI if you just, because whenever we do discovery with a business, I walk into a business, the first thing I do is I start asking questions, and I usually spend the first hour asking questions until I understand what the process looks like. And then once we get to the end of that process, and I'm like, okay, probably 8 times out of 10, I'll be like, we don't really need AI here. What we need to do is systemize this, because we're wasting time here. There's a bunch of mistakes being here. There's a bunch of rework being done. We got a whole bunch of queue time in here. And we can use AI in these few spots to sort of help with these things where it makes sense. Most businesses, and in the scenario where there are scenarios where AI absolutely does make sense. But I think the problem is that we're seeing a lot of hype around the industry right now, and people are having that, we all do it, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out on the stuff. We feel like all of the ads, all the TikToks, all the stuff makes us feel like we're missing out on something. And so when I come in, I'm always just like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Because look, you're not missing out on anything right now. I work with businesses who are doing stuff on paper. I work with businesses who are doing stuff on spreadsheets, the same spreadsheet they've been using since 2003. You're not missing out. You can still be in business and not have all of these things. Okay. But if we get good at a bunch of this stuff, if we modernize a bunch of these things, we can incorporate some of these tools. But I always ask the same question every time. What's your goal? Because your business goals might be different. I'm just trying to retire. I'm just trying to get away from this. I can't get away from this job. It's like, okay, let's systemize. Let's make it easier for you to hand over the reins on some of these things. Let's make it easier for you to bring people in the door, right? To be less dependent on decisions. Let's capture some of that institutional knowledge that you have. Maybe we could put some of that into an AI, a chatbot. People can ask questions. Hey, what would Brian think about this or something, right? Or your goals might be, I want to scale this business. We're at 2 million. We want to get to 10 million. Same problem. AI is not going to do a lot of stuff if you don't have the right systems in place. And AI can be a part of those systems. But just putting AI, there's no such thing as an agent that's going to come in and fix your business. Because you have to model the systems you already have in place. And if you don't have systems in place, there's nothing to work with. We have to get those systems in place. Just getting caught up on my chats here, my comments. I missed a few. Sorry, just double check. YouTube looks good over there. Okay, Clara says, how about mindstudio.ai? Looks like they price per usage. How would that compare to n8n? I can't answer that question because I've never used it, but let's have a look at it. Mind Studio. Clara, if you've used Mind Studio, let me know. Like, what is it you like about it? What is it that you like about it compared to some of these other systems? I know why I'm looking at n8n compared to make.com. And there's a couple of features in there I really want to use. So this is rapidly build and deploy specialized AI workers. I will take a look at this. It looks cool. I always click on pricing first. I want to know what it's going to cost. There's a community version. What does it say here? 10,000 free runs per month. That's pretty good. 2.9% processing fee. So does that mean that they're going to charge you for all of your model stuff? That's the way Cursor works too, right? You can provide your own model, but they still charge you. It's kind of funny. I appreciate it when services have a free tier that you can go in there and play for a while and it doesn't cost much. It's really gonna be like, how does it scale? 100,000 runs per month. That's pretty good. And then the business plan. They're probably new, so they're probably still fleshing out their pricing. I will definitely put this on my bookmark list and look into it. It looks pretty cool. All right. Yerlin says, which AI is good to use for copy trading in stocks? Not sure. I don't. If you're just copy trading, you probably don't need an AI. You just need a system that will copy the trades for you. Those have been around for a while. Jono says, negotiating and getting out key numbers from them. I see. Yeah, interesting. I mean, you could train something to do that. I've seen, um, I saw a demo of somebody that had cold call systems in place. They were just using like Chat GPT voice mode. They would literally make a phone call on their cell, and they didn't want to talk on the phone, and they would just have their custom GPT talk to the person and do the cold call for them. It handled all of it. So I mean, you could experiment with it. Be interesting to see how that went. I don't have any experience in that doing like, but you can. Sorry, let me back that up. It will depend on your prompting, right? If you prompt it to negotiate in a certain way and you give it examples, this is the thing about training these systems is like whenever you're working with an AI agent, a voice agent, any of that kind of stuff, your prompts are really going to matter. And if you want really good prompts, one of the things that you can do is give it good examples. When you get questioned with this, here's the way I want you to answer. When you get questioned with this is the way I want you to answer. So if you get really good at your prompting, you could probably do fairly well with that, right? I would also have the caveat that I'm a big fan of disclosing that you're using AI up front. I don't know how that's going to go. Um, the person who was using AI, using ChatGPT for cold calling, they had the ChatGPT say, yeah, this is an AI. And they actually got some business from that. People were fascinated that they were talking to an AI and that it was so good at the cold call. And then and that generated a lead that way. So something I'd be willing to experiment with for sure. All right. Seuss. Oh, Sue, I think that says. I have zero coding experience messing with Lovable to create a scraper to locate contacts, recommendations. What was that system? There's a system. Oh, geez, Bobby, was it you that mentioned that the other day? There's a system that I saw yesterday. I think that, salespeople apparently really love this system because it's really good at um, going out and finding information about people. But this is the problem with the era that we're in right now is there are so many systems out there. Like Flowwise has been mentioned to me several times. Um, and I can't keep track of them all. There's just too many. I forget what it was. There's some really great AI sales system out there that basically you just plug some stuff in and it can go out do research. You can find them on LinkedIn. It can do all of this different stuff. I can't remember what it's called right now, but it sounds like that's what you're doing. Um, but if you actually, and Sue M3, um, I've used browser extensions for this. There's stuff out there. If you're just looking for leads, um, Google Maps is a great way to go because you can dial right in on Google Maps in terms of searching for, like, if you want to know all of the plumbers in an area or something, like if your target market is plumbers, then I can just say Edmonton plumbers, right? And like it'll give me this list. And if you keep scrolling this list, it'll keep giving you more and more and more plumbers. And there are tools out there that do exactly this. And then you can get this into a spreadsheet. You can find out like maybe your business is helping them with reviews. Maybe it's looking for ones that don't have a website or whatever it is that you're doing, right? And I don't even know that you need AI for that. You can just go out and, find a tool that'll help you scrape that data. Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful. Brandon says, have you heard about AI 16Z? That kind of sounds familiar. It's a problem with being on TikTok. It looks like is it a coin? Yeah, not interested in coins. Let's see here. My dog Wilson, you could add in your AI agent prompt that they need to assess the risk level first and skip high. Yeah, maybe. Again, you'd have to test it out because an AI system doesn't know what, you'd have to give it examples of like, this is what I consider high risk. If you're dealing with financial information, I would consider this high risk. If you're dealing with this information, if you're dealing with a customer, if you're responding to one of these customers, this is what I consider high risk, and then have an agent like make sure that you stepped in or something. You could definitely do that. This is what I don't want to give anybody the impression that I don't think you should use AI because my background's in software. I am what I call a cynical optimist, which sort of means that I'm just like cautious or skeptical by default, because if you've been in any industry long enough, you sort of understand the pitfalls. And especially in software, the software industry's always been hype. Okay. The software industry has always been hype. And every tool that's ever come out ever has always been hyped and marketed and fell short of the expectations every single time. And if I'm being perfectly honest, like we're still not very good at building software. Like it looks like we are because there's lots of software out there, but there's a lot of garbage software out there, right? It's just that some people know how to build software well so that it works most of the time. But after you've been burned enough times, or after you've seen enough systems sort of crash and burn, then you just become inherently sort of skeptical about things. For me, we're very much in the skeptical part of the curve on AI, the cautious part of the curve, because it's all hype. It'll do lots of things, and it'll do lots of things really great. But as we give those systems more complexity, as we give it more risk, we need to keep a closer eye on it because it will do something wrong eventually. Nexus says, what app is this? This is n8n. We haven't got anywhere with this today. We're just kind of looking at it because there's some cool stuff in here. And so actually back to the earlier question, which was about Mind Studio and about trying different tools. One of the reasons that I'm looking at n8n is because one of the things that I can't do in make.com is have multiple triggers, right? So on this one, you can have a webhook trigger, something else is a trigger, and then you can sort of, the inputs for this, you can have branches like if it's this input, use the data from there. If it's the other one, or if it's this trigger, use that data. If it's the other trigger, use that one. There's a lot of really interesting nodes in n8n that make it very compelling. And so I wanted to start playing with it today. I downloaded the community version a while ago, played with it a tiny bit. I don't think they had this AI agent node yet. And of course, all of these systems are adding new functionality all the time. So, all right, get caught up on my comments some more here. Let's see. Includo.ai says there's way too many. Agreed. There's too much. There's so many out there. It's overwhelming. It's impossible to keep up with everything that's out there right now. Patrick says, oh, sorry, I missed a couple comments. I missed a lot of comments. I'm trying to get caught up. I honestly am. There's lots of great conversation today. I really love it. Let's see. Brandon asks, how much of what you do is coding as opposed to using services? So the simple answer to that is I try to use services as much as I can until they don't do what I want or they become cost prohibitive. And that's just a time thing. So because I can write code fairly quickly with AI cursor, stuff like that. But the thing is that let's do a really quick graphic here. Let me pull up in Whimsical. I've been meaning to talk about this because this conversation about should I build it from scratch? Why would I pay for it when I can just build it? Right? It's actually a really interesting conversation. And there's some strategic stuff we can talk about. We can just also just draw some boxes on the screen and kind of talk about this. So this is your project. This is your app, your whatever, okay? Make it purple. That's us, okay? And then if we look at, we'll just duplicate this box, right? This one we're going to make sort of blue, I guess. So this is our app, okay? And if we're building an app or some kind of project or something like that, let me just recreate that so I don't have to bump up the text again, right? This is sort of like the environment, right? Which maybe represents sort of the system. And then there's another piece here that's maybe like the infrastructure, right? And then there's pieces on top of this. This is overly simplified, by the way, but we'll just talk about this. This is like maybe say the browser. And then the browser also lives on some kind of device, right? So app environment, infrastructure. There's also things to consider like infrastructure, environment. This might actually be the environment, which may or may not be separate from something like your operating system. Okay. And then this lives, the operating system lives on a piece of hardware. Environment, I'm going to say environment or config, okay? I'm sort of talking about all of the pieces that go, and if you're not in software, some of this might not make sense, but I'll just talk about it. Hardware, and then the infrastructure, this is like infrastructure and or like maybe say the facility, right? So this is like When I talk about infrastructure facility, I really mean like the physical, providing power, providing the networking, all that kind of stuff. This is the box it lives on. This is the host operating system. This is the configuration that makes your thing run. This is your app. This is what's consuming your app, which might be a browser or a device. Okay. And then that lives inside of a device. And then on top of this is like, maybe we'll say the user's needs. Okay. This is sort of like what we collectively are interested in. We'll just call this the trend, maybe. Okay. So these are all of the pieces. If top to bottom, if we look at your app in terms of all of the pieces that are involved, okay, there's only so many of these things as a consumer that you sort of see, and that's this side here as a consumer. These are the parts that you see, okay? And as a software engineer, sort of these are the parts to some degree that we manage, okay? If I build an app or a system using no-code, low-code tools, okay, then the portion of this that I'm managing, because keep in mind, everything here, everything from top to bottom on this is changing, everything. That's the challenge we run into in software these days. We have a whole industry, and when we talk about testing, we talk about DevOps, we talk about all of this different stuff in the software side of things. Everything is changing. People's trends are changing. User behavior is changing. The devices we use, you upgrade your phone, you upgrade your laptop. You're using a Chromebook now. You're using a smartwatch now. I don't know. Your browser's constantly changing. Chrome updates every month. They make changes every month. The specification changes. Right? That's not even on this list, but it's in there. The things that present the data to you, the way CSS works, the way the browser renders. It changes less over time, but new features are introduced. Like you can do, like basically you're storing passkeys on your device, or like integration with cameras or PWAs. There's so many different layers to this. And then your app has to change because you're always adding features, right? And then the things you don't see, the things that we manage on the software side, is that the configuration needs to change. What happens when we move the app from here to here? How do we do that without people knowing that it's happening, right? The operating systems are always changing. This is a problem for companies right now. I know companies, and I work with companies right now, they're stuck on older versions of projects that they wrote. They're in older versions of programming languages, and they must upgrade soon, because the newer version of the operating system that they need to upgrade to does no longer have support for the old version of the language that they're using, or the packages aren't available, or you have to compile them yourself. And there are security vulnerabilities on those operating systems. There are the device, you don't realize this, but like there are vulnerabilities for all of the cloud hardware and systems, and even like your phone and the Mac and all of this stuff all the time, daily. And we have to manage that. Then the hardware changes constantly, the facilities, all of these things. So if you're building it yourself, if you're like, I'll just build it for myself, it's cheaper. What that means is that you are taking on the ownership of all of this responsibility, all of this, everything inside this pink box. You are managing all of that. You're taking all of that on. So when we say, why do we use low-code, no-code tools? Because all of this stuff under the purple box is managed by someone else. I'm just paying them money to do it. The only thing I have to worry about is this. And I don't even have to worry about the browser, because there's even pieces in the app. If the browser changes, I don't have to worry about that. That's somebody else's responsibility. If the iPhone upgrades and the app is no longer compatible with this version of iPhone, I don't have to worry about that. That's somebody else's job. I only have to worry about the functionality of what I'm doing. That's why I would pay for another service. And as soon as I build that myself, now I'm responsible for all of it. We call that total cost of ownership, right? So I forgot why we were answering that question. Let me get back through this. What app is this? How much money do you make doing this? It depends. You can, I think with AI, you can pay your bills. How much money do I make? I make my careers, or my earnings have always been commensurate with software engineers for the most part. I've gone through rough patches when it's been hard to find work, but yeah, I think it's harder to get into the industry, the actual software industry, but I don't think software industry is going away anytime soon. New Avenue says, excited about NVIDIA's Digits supercomputer and why? I'll just keep an eye on it. I think it's interesting. Yeah, but I'll keep an eye on it. Okay. Any way to use, so this is Dr. Durgam. Hope I'm saying that right. Any way to use AI to monitor SEO and Google Ads? I don't think you need AI to monitor those things. You just need a system that will monitor them. And there's lots of tools out there. If you want to do analysis on those ads, sentiment analysis, you could use AI for that. But in terms of monitoring, there's tools out there. Depending on how much you want to monitor. Excuse me. Um, Google Ads might be trickier. I don't know specifically how to monitor Google Ads, but I know there are tools out there that will do it for you. So I would literally just take that phrase and put it in Google and see what pops up and then throw money at that. Patrick says, thoughts on using AI for contract or business info enrichment and corrections? Absolutely. I think that's contact or business info enrichment. Yep, absolutely. I think that's a good use. You kind of still have to double check stuff, right? Because if you're scraping data from somewhere, again, it's more of an automation process than an AI process. I know people are calling it AI. There's a lot of businesses out there nowadays that what they're doing is they're taking their old systems that used to do this sort of in an automated fashion, and they're just kind of regurgitating it. Oh yeah, there we go. Phantom Buster. Thank you, Bobby. That was the one. Phantom Buster. This is actually that tool that enriches. So their whole thing is about ethical web scraping, and they do exactly that. You can pay them money, and they will enrich your data, and it looks pretty cool. Again, I haven't tied into it. They claim to be able to sort of tie into a whole bunch of different systems, social media, different stuff, and then like enrich the data in sort of a spreadsheet fashion. So definitely look into that. It looks cool. Richie says, appreciate you taking the time to give it all this information. Thank you. Not a problem. Not a problem. I appreciate everybody stopping in. So this is sort of what I do in the, so if you're brand new here on the live, my name's Aaron. My background's in software. I do tech strategy for businesses and I do consulting. And typically when I come into businesses, what I'll do is I'll have you walk me through your processes. Businesses come in sometimes asking for like maybe an AI chat or an AI agent or something like that. And I'll say, okay, let's talk about that in a minute. But first, let's have a look at your business and look at your processes and figure out where can we automate things that make sense for you that will drive value back in your business. And when I say drive value back in, what I mean is you've got a team of 6 people spending 8 hours a day doing this one thing. And if we can cut that in half, then they could spend the other half of that time doing interesting things. Because the people who work for your business, they already know all of your problems and they have creative and interesting ideas about how to do cool things in your business that would create more money or drive more value and all of that. But they're busy doing stuff. They're doing the day-to-day stuff, right? So how can we systemize some of those things, reduce mistakes, automate, make it easier to train and onboard and scale? And in that process, we'll use AI sometimes and lots of times in the places where it makes sense. Because I'm in software, because I've done a lot of security, I've done a lot of automation in that industry, then I bring that perspective in to say like, okay, I know that's really cool, but we won't be running our financials through this, or we won't be running credit cards through this, or we won't be storing this particular information. And at the same time, I'll make recommendations to businesses too. Hey, have you thought about a good password manager? Right? This is what that means. This is what risk you're taking on your business because you just haven't run into that, or somebody hasn't, you didn't realize that these were risky activities that we're taking. So let's look at your business from a holistic perspective and say like, instead of just like sticking some AI on top and creating more chaos, let's make sure that all the fundamentals are in place so that when you do start, trying to scale this process, or we use AI for this, or whatever that looks like, that we're not just creating more chaos, right? You can't scale chaos, or you can try, but it just creates more chaos. And I'm sort of an anti-chaos agent, if you want to think of it that way. Figgy says, advice on picking the best way to automate legal documents against policy changes. I would always, so you could take, I know somebody that's doing this as a business, and they work consistently at training custom GPTs on legal documents in specific areas, and constantly improving the prompts, constantly improving the queries to get it better and better and better. But always, again, let me pull up my risk complexity framework, because legal stuff is both high risk and high complexity, right? This is my framework right here. Because it's high risk and high complexity, you always want to, whoever's using that needs to operate with the understanding that these are just, that the work needs to be double checked. So you can use that AI system for pointers, right? We've got this list of policies and we've got this document, and we're looking for areas where this is not in compliance, right? And have it spit out a bunch of pointers. You're still going to need to verify that information. So if it saves you time, and maybe RAG queries or different things like that. I saw a startup that sold a while ago for 600 million, and this is what they did: was they'd found a way to make the document, to make the AI system accurate, supposedly 100% of the time, and they sold because of that. And the way that they did that was basically like very advanced RAG queries. It could probably more to it than that. Just my from what I read, that's what it seemed like they were doing. But because it is high risk, you want to stay in the loop and make sure that you are double checking everything. Yeah. All right. Nadia says flow ice, but I think you mean flow eyes. Are you saying flow eyes? Chocolate says, what's it called? I need the sales AI, please. That was the, I think it was this Phantom Buster. Check it out. Let me see if there's, extract a list of leads. So this is one of their examples. Source qualified leads from any corner of the web. Transform top websites into your database. Find contacts, companies, niche. There's a lot of ways to sort of get leads information. And I mean, like, cold calling is still a thing, right? So, I mean, if you can narrow down on more better qualified leads, I know people that do just LinkedIn as sort of like a lead strategy. I know people use Google Maps as lead strategies. I think there's lots of ways that you can sort of approach this. And then what's AI good for in that context? Maybe enriching some of the data, which is still an automation thing. It's not necessarily an AI thing. But then personalization, that's another area where I'm seeing a lot of AI these days. Personalizing your cold outreach and things like that. And then, of course, there's, voice outbound is coming out right now. So, okay, I think we're just about caught up. Or not. I see there's so many comments in here. I love the conversation. Thanks for stopping in. I'm just going to keep going through these comments and start picking out. Let me see here. People are talking about DeepSeek. Lots of people asking about B2B sales tools. B2B sales AI. I'm not sure. John just says, jumped in. What do you do? We're supposed to be tinkering with n8n, but we're just sort of answering questions. I was talking about earlier the differences between, or why I was looking at n8n as opposed to make.com. Again, like the ability to have multiple triggers on a scenario. I really like the way the nodes are laid out in terms of controlling some of the flow. So this is something I'm going to be experimenting with a lot more in the near future. Art by Williams says, this is the most exciting, useful live I've fallen into. Hey, thanks for stopping by, Art. Appreciate the feedback. Nico says, Salesforce doesn't even use their... When I saw that announcement by Salesforce, like Salesforce announced their sort of sales AI thing, and then they hired, 1,000 salespeople to try and sell it. Tell me it's no good without telling me it's no good. So Chocolate asks again, if anybody knows of a good B2B sales tool, again, I think the outbound is coming out right now. Like VoiceFlow has outbound voice in in beta right now. You can try that out. Lots of conversation. What is memory for? Sorry, I appreciate everybody hanging out. I'm not ignoring your comments. There are just so many. I'm trying to get caught up. So be patient with me. Having a really great conversation, and the live keeps getting more and more people on it. So appreciate you hanging out. And if you're patient, I will get to your question. The memory portion. So this is actually one of the cool things that I think is interesting, is that the memory portion of this allows us to pick where we want to store the past, the conversation, basically. So when you have a conversation with ChatGPT, right? It sort of stores that conversation in what they call a thread. And so with this particular chat agent, they're allowing us to choose where we put that in, where we keep that information. We have a variety of different tools that we can pick from. And so there's, let's see, Postgres, Redis, window buffer memory, which stores it in n8n memory, so there's no credentials required. There's probably limitations around that too. It's probably ephemeral, meaning it doesn't stick around. The Postgres chat memory stores the chat history in a Postgres table, so you could always go in, which is just Postgres is a database. You could go in and like look at that. Redis, on the other hand, is also ephemeral. Redis is only in memory, so you would need a Redis system running. Redis is going to be super fast. Yeah, there's going to be pros and cons, different ways there. Okay. Nadia says, the guys with the money would rather pay to have it done. Absolutely. Are you creating the front end or back end? It depends. Sometimes both. Usually if I'm building something out, it's the front end, and then the back end I'll tie into something like, I usually write back end stuff in like serverless, AWS or something like that. Chocolate. I did get to your question. Sorry that took so long. There's a lot of comments in here, so I'm just trying to get caught up. I do try to answer every question. So I try not to skip, pick and choose, but I can see that you know, as we get a lot of people on the live, it gets challenging to sort of answer every question. So if you're new here, my name's Aaron. I'm a software engineer. I move kind of slow. I'm here for the conversation. I'm here to talk about things. I'm here to discover tools. I don't move fast. If the conversation's moving a little slow, I mean, you don't. I won't feel bad if you move on, but I will get to your question eventually. So let me see here. John, I'm sorry you asked what languages, and I missed. I was a little bit back in the conversation, so I think I've lost the context there. All right. Nico says this isn't web-based, right? Usually I'm using web-based tools. Yeah, I'm using the hosted version of n8n and not the. I downloaded the community version, but I'm not. I'd prefer to just pay for the hosted one, because again, it comes back to this whole conversation about where's that graph? Where's my whimsical? Somewhere over here. No, did I close it? Ah, there it is. Yeah, I just want this part here, the purple. I just want to manage this piece. I don't want to manage everything. So I'll typically, when you pay money for something, that means you don't have to worry about all of this other stuff. But if you're hosting it yourself, if you host n8n yourself, then again, you have to, you sort of now own all of this, right? And if you're going to get that and put it in production, then you need to know how to do that. And then when there are updates, because all of this is changing and the n8n is changing, the community version, then you need to manage those changes. You now own everything. So I'll just pay the $20. Let them do it. Let me see. What do you think about Steam's handheld or others? I've never used it. I don't have an opinion on that. Sorry. So Nadia, Nadia, I see you got a bunch of questions here. I'm just going to try and scroll back and see if I can catch the beginning of this thread. Because I see questions about many layers that should see eye to eye. Wow, so AI helps with that. Maybe bridges, if not this type of thing. I'm sorry, I lost the thread on that conversation. Does something like a wildcard exist for this? Yeah, sorry, I didn't get to that comment quick enough. Adam, what is the place to do this? Was that from your previous question? Conversation's moving too fast. I'll try to get caught up here. Okay. Will humans have new jobs? We do anyway. I think technology has always sort of made jobs shift and change, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. Nope, this is not bot trading. Jan says, to monitor SEO, just use a good search console and keywords from Google on Google Ads and SEMrush. SEMrush is expensive, is it not? It's pricey, but I think it's worth it. If you're doing a lot of SEO optimization, SEMrush looks like, I've only used it a tiny bit. It looks super cool because you can find your low difficulty keywords. You can see all of the stuff in there. SEO hasn't really changed that much, I don't think. Christian asks, have you heard of anything LLM? I have. I haven't played with it. What do you like about it? I think that's, you could just sort of pull down any model from, is it the one where you can pull down any model from Hugging Face, or is that something else? Goofius says, how is that tool you just showed different from Make? I think there's, yes, this is exactly what we're talking about today, and that you can do a little bit more with. I really appreciate Make for things like, again, like the custom mail hook and like the simplicity of it. I like how simple Make is. There are some things I struggle with, though, in that a little bit richer flow control. And one of the things I'm seeing in n8n that's really nice, the ability to have multiple triggers on a scenario, which is really great. So we can have one that's a production trigger and then one's just like a test trigger. Or when you run a node, I saw this on a video the other day. If you run a node, it sort of keeps your test data so you can keep running it against that test data, which is really nice. That's one of those things I find annoying about make.com is you got to continually rerun stuff. Nick asks, will humans have new jobs or nah? I think we'll always have jobs. Well, there'll always be stuff to do. AI's not, we're not there yet. Christopher, tell me more about n8n versus Make an Airtable. Let's come back to that one. John, absolutely. Please send me a DM. I work with organizations all the time on projects. That's what I do. So yeah, definitely send me a DM if you have, even if you just want some pointers, talk about tech, talk about strategy, definitely. Nico, can this build a network of agents? I think you have to build the network of agents. And then you have to pay close attention to it because it's going to be wrong. You're going to have to fix all of the areas that are kind of, you need to, with AI systems and agents, you need to continually revise, improve, and keep an eye on things. That's just how it works. Phantom Buster. The question was from New Avenue. And it's sort of like an AI-based tool for enriching data. And they have a bunch of cool stuff in here. So they say scrape leads from LinkedIn posts, connect and send follow-up messages, send leads from Phantom Buster to HubSpot, enrich your contact lists. We'll click on all solutions. What does this do? Yeah, they have a bunch of stuff in here. You can kind of, it's like a workflow tool that uses AI to enrich data, and it looks cool. I think it's a little pricey once you get into it. Oh, excuse me. SoCal, I hope I'm saying that right. Thoughts on Eliza OS as the framework, easy to use? I'm interested in creating my own bots. I've never looked at that. Eliza OS, let's bring it up. The operating system for AI agents. Interesting. There's so much stuff coming out these days. The operating system for AI agents. I don't have an opinion on this right now. I've never used it, but I'll put this on my bookmark list. Thanks for pointing it out. Dots says, what's the best way to get leads? Depends on your vertical, but I mean, there's lots of options. You could just go buy data sets. You can go on LinkedIn and just search for who's your target market. Before you need leads, who's your target market? If you're a salon, the way you want leads is different than if you're an accountant, or if you're selling B2B and you're targeting marketing directors, right? It's going to be different. What's your vertical? What do you do for automation outreach? I don't do a lot of automated outreach right now. I do most of my marketing on TikTok and social media. Most of my leads come in from social media right now. But I've done cold calling. And you could probably, I see there's a lot of automations around that right now. It's interesting. Colin says, n8n is cool. I'm a fan of Flowise. I keep hearing about Flowise. Colin, tell us what you like about Flowise that n8n doesn't do. Jonas asks, crash course, what is this? This is an automation tool called n8n we're just tinkering with. It's got some cool features, like this AI agent. Again, it's got the ability to build out, RAG queries and things a little bit more interesting. Whereas in make.com, some of that feels a little bit more manual. There are some things in Make that n8n doesn't do. I think Make is a little bit more approachable. Christian says you can self-host n8n. Thanks for all the comments. I will get to your comment. If I haven't got to it, I'm not ignoring. I'm just going through these one at a time. So just bear with me. I am going through them one at a time. And I see that there's tons here. So I will get caught up. Crash course. Yeah. So this is n8n. You can self-host n8n. We just talked about that. I'd rather pay the $20 than own the whole thing. But if you don't have $20 or you want to just tinker with it at home, that's fine. The stuff that I do is in production, so I'd rather not have all of the pieces that I'm managing and rather just pay someone $20 to do it. Webhook, I have a video for that. So there's a couple of people asked, what is a webhook? I have a video on webhooks in my my bio. Go check it out. And a webhook is just something you can send in over a URL to send data into a workflow. Is n8n scalable? I hope so. It should be. Scalable in terms of price or scalable in terms of operations? I think it's probably very scalable in terms of operations. Though whenever you're dealing with systems, because you're always dealing with different APIs and stuff, there are going to be upper limits on, like you're going to have an account limit on how many times you can do something, and there'll be APIs will have throttling. There are always upper limits to things. But yeah, it should be scalable. But there's lots of times where you might use an automated. See, the thing is that you don't ever just get into one system and use that forever. You just get into that system for now until it no longer solves your problem or your goals change. Your goals right now aren't scaling. Your goals are just getting something working. Once you get something working in place and you hit the position where you're like, ooh, this isn't scaling great, now you have different goals. So you're probably going to change things, right? That's the nature of software. Z says, this is a very bad AI agent interface. Could be. Hey, just joined. Quick end purpose. We're just tinkering today. I do have a purpose. So I have been working on this personal assistant, and I was hoping to tinker on that. I was building this out using all of these different make.com scenarios, and I'm thinking I can simplify some of that using n8n. So we started looking at that a little bit, and then we got bombarded with questions. So I'm trying to get through some of the conversation. I love the conversation today. This is fantastic. So Z says, I've built a much better one, have inbound, outbound, have done work with several companies. Cool. You should make videos about it. So JM says, I think about what the biggest difference between RPA and this way of doing the way of doing bus processing execution. Okay. JR says, any automation platform on the medical field? Interesting question. Probably. Medical is super interesting because you're usually dealing with sensitive data if it's client data for sure. So you got to be really careful there what you're doing. I think we're probably going to see a ton of stuff in medical. Well, we always see a ton of stuff in medical because technology changes that field a lot, right? But a lot of probably offerings in the private automation space or private AI, because you don't want to just take like patient records and run them into ChatGPT. Like that would be bad, right? You don't want to push sensitive information, PII. Like we have laws around that stuff, right? You don't want to just send it in there. So I think there's a lot of scenarios where you could use automation within the medical field for sure, because there's a lot of manual processes. There's a lot of things there's a lot of things that are just done on paper. You go see the doctor, they hand you a piece of paper, right? There's a lot of opportunities there, but there's a ton of security concerns, and then there's a ton of regulation, so that we see things move very slow in that industry for that reason. There's probably a ton of opportunity there, but we just have to proceed cautiously because we're dealing with people's information, and then we're dealing with their health, right? So there's, yeah. So JZ Tech, all right, I'll click on that. It better be good. JZ Tech, seamlessly transform ideas into impactful solutions. Okay. I already hate that you've overridden the scroll feature. It makes me wonder if you're using Framer under the hood or something. Oh, you're using Next. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Our story, expertise, process. It seems like you're an agency. Yeah, right on. Thanks for sharing. Chris asks, what can you use this workflow software for? Can you layer AI models to perform complex tasks? So yes, more complex. You always want to start fairly simple when it comes to when you have any complexity, when you have tasks, you need to understand what those tasks, those processes look like. And then, yes, the way I always approach this is sort of start small or start with a simple task and then build out from there. Because as you get more complex, there's more opportunities for your AI to sort of start making mistakes. And then you need to go in and adjust prompts or change the workflow or start making things a little bit more deterministic. So you can model those things out. Um, you want AI in the parts where you're decision making, or that's typically where you'll use that. So if we just go, where's that? This diagram here. I should rename this. This is the example. Let's say workflow example. If I can type. So if this was a workflow, right, where you have some inputs, and then you need to make a decision, you can use AI for those decision points if they're, low risk decisions or fairly simple, right? But basically, you can, and then start building out more complexity into that. Usually what I'll do is look at a business. I'll work with a company and look at the process that they have. And then I'll try to insert automation into their existing process that'll take some of those manual steps out. Or sometimes, lots of times, businesses just need something simple like, oh, you've got like a team or a person. There's a whole job here that's just chasing salespeople for the correct information about these customers. So you could just systemize that and just be like, give them a form that they have to fill out, and then connect it to some, if they fill it out and it's have a bunch of required fields, and if they're missing information, then you can just have the system nag them, or just tie it to their paycheck, right? You can put systems in place that will let them know when they've done their job wrong, and people will just naturally course correct if you have something nagging them. In software, we do this with tests. We have the test system tell you, hey, your test failed, and we won't let you merge this code until they pass, right? And then people just start doing the right thing once they know what the success path looks like. This tool is called, I can't see your username there. This tool is called n8n. Skip a little bit. We're sort of tinkering with, Jay asks, are we making agents? We're sort of tinkering with this feature. We haven't got very far into it. I think this is really cool. I've only used mostly ChatGPT for building out agents in the past, using make.com. So like an example of that would be, for instance, which one of these workflows? This one here, where we were building a very simple person. This is an OpenAI custom assistant that has access to some custom actions. And so I love the idea of being able to model all of that in one place, and being able to sort of visualize it all in one place, and be able to have a better way of testing those. Testing is the hardest part of this. Testing is the hardest part of building out agents, the manual testing. In fact, I have a startup that me and my brother started around testing AI agents. It's not ready for launch yet, but it's close. Just like manual testing. Because if you ever tweak anything, you tweak a prompt, you change something, or when you find, there's this iterative process where you start using the agent, and then people start using it, and then it does something wrong. You've got to go in and make adjustments. And then you need to know, did I make this better? Or did I make it worse? You've got to ask it all those questions again. The manual testing process is always the most challenging. So anything we can do to reduce the amount of work that goes into setting up and testing and making changes to these systems, I'm always looking for those opportunities. Matt asks, what coding languages do you know? A lot. I don't know them well anymore. I've written everything from Java to Perl, JavaScript, PHP, tiny little bit of Ruby. I still use a lot of Python. I use a lot of JavaScript, Smalltalk, Lua. There's more in there. And then your other stuff, like CSS, which isn't really a programming language. It's HTML, same thing. Those are not really languages, more like data formats. Yeah, quite a few. ActionScript, which is of the ECMAScript standard. I've played with a lot of different languages, SQL, so on and so forth. This question is, what's an example of this being used for basic business, say a retail store? Retail stores, I think the things you want to kind of automate are like feedback reviews, review requests. You could use an agent for maybe people ask about your FAQ stuff, like what's your return policy, or what are your, stuff that would be on your website. If you wanted to have a live chat or something like that. In theory, if you have people asking in for stuff, you could have a better automated phone system. But there are probably interesting things you could do in terms of I don't know, would you want to do like some kind of gamification in store, like have a QR code game, or maybe an in-store concierge would be fun, where you could, somebody could come in the store and connect to your wife, or send you a text message or to a specific number and ask questions about things. Um, they could ping the somebody to come and unlock the change room over SMS or something. I guess there's maybe some interesting stuff you could do there. Chris asks, what can you use this workflow software for? Can you layer AI models? Oh, we already answered that. Sorry. Getting caught up. New Avenue asks, what's best for a novice, Make or n8n? I would start with Make. It's a little bit simpler to get into. Oh, my questions, what's best for novice? Oh, yes, Make.com. Nadia says, Crowdcraft looks more legit. Hope so. That's my business. Tyler, I'm late to the party. What is this used for? We're just sort of tinkering. I was just looking at this n8n node. We haven't built anything today. Eventually, I want to replace this one workflow, this one. We built some of this out in Make.com, where if I get a booking email in my system, my personal assistant can kick off a process that will go and do research on that potential client, and then we'll put it into another custom assistant. We didn't get that far. I realized that I was running into some barriers in Make, and I saw some cool stuff in n8n. I wanted to come over here and check it out. I think n8n is going to simplify some of the management for this. Core Diggy says, can we apply the automations to real world scenarios? Yeah, absolutely. We do that every day. Lots of times automating intake data. So if you have a lot of data that comes in, or intake processes for your customers, if you need to collect information from salespeople, qualifying information for leads, automation is just basically putting automatic steps in some of the workflows that exist in your business. So if there's data that goes through, if you have a piece of data comes in, for instance, a real estate agent I worked with recently, they basically would drop a PDF of a listing in a Google Drive, and then somebody would take and pull down that PDF, and then they would go and find some photos of that listing and drop those in the Google Drive, and then they would start writing up a whole bunch of social media data or posts, as well as a write-up for their WordPress site. And so we just took that same process. Once the listing came in, we pulled the MLS ID out of the PDF, and then we grabbed the photos off of an existing site for that brokerage, and then we auto-generated the write-up based on the style that they wanted for their WordPress site and published that as a draft. And then we also published Facebook, like social media listings that linked to that particular article as a draft as well. So it's just something that somebody was manually doing anywhere between 8 and 20 hours a week, right? They still would go in and like adjust things. We sort of plugged into their process to like fast track some of that. Yeah. So there are lots of real world scenarios where automation helps. Matt asks, what companies have you worked for? That's an offline question. I've worked for big companies and small companies. I've worked for American companies. I've worked with in the automotive industry. I've worked up in the startup industry. I've done a lot of work in the testing industry. And now I work for my own company. My company, I consult with businesses that are looking to do automation within their organization. They're looking to integrate AI sometimes, or they're trying to figure out how they can modernize their systems using some modern technologies. Yeah, I bridge the tech gap. I tell people I fix printers. They're just not printers anymore. What does the AI agent node allows us to encapsulate some of the logic of what an AI, it allows us to put some decisions in there. It allows it to give us some instructions that will let it make decisions. And then you can start plugging tools in. Like in this tools one, there's a lot of stuff we can do on the tools side. So once we get the chat model, say we pick ChatGPT, or say, I don't know, Anthropic, whatever, OpenAI, whatever, for the model, we can give it the prompts. But then when we connect the tools, what we can do with the tools is we can give it access to maybe a calendar or a Google Drive. We can give it access to like Airtable, Google Docs, all of the other stuff we could do with n8n, really, Notion. And we can give it instructions. When this happens, do this. When that happens, do that. Right? And so there's a lot of possibilities. We're starting to encapsulate some of the workflows into a system that can make a few decisions for us. in a smart way. I saw a recommendation for a new tool, AISDR. We'll take a look at it. AISDR. This one here, I assume. Books meetings with your ideal prospects through personalized conversations. We're seeing I think we're going to continue to see interesting like sales and marketing based tools coming out constantly. I think it's easier now to build AI based tools. And it's probably just a wrapper around ChatGPT. Starts at $750 a month. So, I mean, to send $750 a month to send 1,000 emails. They warm up the domain for you. It's sort of covering a bunch of stuff. It's probably worth it. Be worth checking out. They have a very specific target market, it looks like. But yeah, interesting. If it makes sense, if you're willing to, just throw some money. If you're an established business and you have a budget for this kind of thing, probably makes sense. Yeah. Probably going to save you some time. Nico says, my customers constantly ask about my data security and ISO standards. Any AI security tools? That's another area where I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the near future. Because ISO is important. I have a couple clients that I'm talking with about this constantly about, think about SOC 2, think about ISO 27001. Just in terms of because it's not just about data standards in terms of how you store the data. It's also about your processes for your business, your onboarding, your offboarding. How are you rotating secrets? How often are you having meetings? Just how often are you practicing your disaster recovery? All that kind of stuff. This is all super important stuff if you want systems that work, right? And because there's data breaches in the industry every single day. So any AI security tools, I don't know of any specifically that I can recommend to you, but I definitely think this is an area where we're going to see a lot of stuff in the near future. Another area that's growing massively right now is cyber insurance, right? Huge industry right now. All right. A few more comments. Citra is great. Real estate. People Data Labs, company and people data. Interesting. Just throw these on my bookmark list. People and data labs. It's terrifying how much, the whole business, the whole internet's basically runs on scraping data, right? It's just what it is. Chief Man TV says, do you like to automate personal tasks as well? A little bit, yeah. I was using a tool. We sort of fell off the rails on this tool called Habitica I was using for a bit. But yeah, sometimes, if it makes sense. Noah's a FlowWise partner. That's why it keeps coming up. That's cool. I got to look at FlowWise. It looks fun. Yeah. I think, man, every time I think I'm just about caught up on the comments. It's cool. Ian Randall says, what are the best use cases for AI-powered automation, in your opinion? I'm seeing a lot of stuff around sales right now. So, personalization, I think that makes sense. Classifying data, that makes a lot of sense to me. If I'm making simple decisions, like drafting content, I think makes sense. Like drafting maybe social media, drafting articles for your website. You should always be kind of jumping in and tweaking those things, but like templating stuff. AI-powered automation, I would consider the code that I'm writing fairly automated. I just talk into it and it writes the code. It's not strictly an automation, but I think there's a lot of use cases there. I tend to favor the low risk use cases. So, and if you get into stuff that's Ian Randall says none of these are HIPAA compliant. 100%. That's, there are regulations around this stuff. So we need to be, if you are engaging with an agency that is doing AI and automation stuff, just be mindful that you're asking those questions about what about security, right? What about what kind of, because even with things like cold calling, different countries will have different regulations. Lots of places still do it. You can't automate text messages in the US specifically without registering with A2P, right? Things like that. You need to sort of be aware of what are the regulations for various things in the region that I'm operating. And even in the US, different states, if you breach customers' data in the United States, in Wisconsin, it's going to be different than California. They have different laws around how you can be fined for leaking customer data, things like that. Nova says, I'm a warehouse network analyst. I use AI daily to create tools to pull data and analyze it. That's cool. And when you use AI to pull data and analyze it, what AI's, if you're using say ChatGPT or something, it's probably just writing Python code to analyze your data under the hood. It'd be cool to hear more about your like your successes and your challenges with that Nova. What are you are there specific things you're struggling with, and what do you find it's really good for? Crown Jewel says, what time? What I think you mean what type of AI agents you're building? Just joining. Would this be equivalent to BuildShip? I've never seen BuildShip. Let's have a look at that. One of the things I love about these conversations is all the recommendations for tools, because this is part of the challenge. Is there's so many tools out there. So let me know, Crown Jewel, what is the thing about BuildShip that you really like? What does it do really well that you're enjoying? I've never worked with it, and we're just seeing so many tools coming out. There's no clear winners in the industry right now. Obviously, like there's some popular ones. N8n is doing really well right now. Make and Zapier have been around for a long time. N8n has some features that are really cool, like the ability to do multiple triggers, different things like that. Some of the way that they let you retest scenarios without rerunning the whole thing, retest specific nodes. They deep dive into some of the nodes, give you very specific functionality, which is kind of nice. So yeah, I think depends on your use case, right? Nico, cursor AI layout hurts my brain. Cursors, it's based on it's an IDE, right? It's a coding tool based on VS Code. It's just kind of it's the standard for me. We used a tool called Sublime for the longest time, and then VS Code came out, and then we all sort of switched to that, it seems, because it's open source from Microsoft, and it's good. And then Cursor's based off of that, so it was just sort of a natural progression. You can do it. Crown says you can do it for customer service agents. Okay. Do you mean that other tool specifically, the BuildShip tool? Ain Randall says AI SDR is impressive for automating outreach over email. You can layer that up with cold calls. Cool. That sounds great. I haven't done any cold calling for a little while, but but I mean, outreach is a real thing, right? 3 said, what are the limits of this? I think there's a little bit of complexity in n8n, so I don't know if it's a limit. These tools are designed to sort of reduce the limitations in your workflows, right? So I think it would depend on your use case, or like what are the limits? Cost is going to be a limit. Yeah, and then there's some things that are just hard to do. We were doing some data manipulation the other day. It's like we were trying to just transform like a simple JSON object. It's like this would be really, really simple with JavaScript or Python. It was really hard to do in make.com, right? You can find me on YouTube, Cloudcraft Software, but if you click through to my bio on TikTok, the link is in there in my link tree. Chris asks, can you go over how to plan and map out new automations, design tools, documentation? I use a tool called Whimsical, and I'll sit down with a business and I will, I used to use Miro, but I'm really mad at them. But I'll map out, where's that example workflow? So I'll map out the workflow just like this. Because the parts, when I talk to a customer about a workflow, they'll be like, oh yeah, we do this, and then we do this, and then that comes out. And after we sit down for half an hour and tease out all of the different things, we realize that there's all of these decisions in the process that they didn't, and then they're like, oh yeah, and then this, and then if this happens, it goes back here. And then I'm like, okay, what about, what if you don't hear back from them at this point? Or what about, what if this is missing, right? There's all of these internalized decisions that we don't realize are actually a part of the process. And so we'll sit down and we'll map this out. We'll map out the process, and then we'll decide, okay, let's put an AI in here. Let's put an AI in here. Plug into your existing, let's put a workflow, automated workflow in here and plug into your existing process. Test that out, see how it's going. And then we'll make adjustments and build that out over time. If it's doing well, then we'll add on, we'll build onto it. Hope that helps. That's usually how I approach this. And then I also have other tools that I'll talk to the organization, because when somebody says they want an AI, I usually come in and I'm like, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Oh, I want more leads. Okay. Do you have If you want more leads, I mean, an AI can do that. We can do systems to get you more leads or whatever, but like, what's the actual problem you're having, right? If you don't have the fundamentals of your business set up, like, do you have things like, if you just want more leads and you're a plumbing business, then my first question for you is like, when was the last time you emailed your existing customers? Well, we've never done that. Well, you've been in business for 13 years and you have an entire database of customers that you've never reached back to. You know how much easier to sell something to someone you've already sold something to? If you just email all of your customers every month or every 3 months and say, hey, don't forget to book your hot water tank service. Hey, don't forget to book we have furnaces here in Canada. Don't forget to book your service for this or that. Don't forget these different, like, when was the last time you serviced right? Like, if you're not reaching out to your customers, you could immediately book up for the next 2 months just by sending out one email, right? So you don't need AI for that. You can just reactivate your customer database. So I start asking questions, right? What are you trying to do? What are your goals? IE says, I'm new to agents. So do you only use ChatGPT to train the agent? No. Well, a training is just, when we throw this word around, train. What we mean is we're just designing the prompts, right? Because when you're building an agent, you're just designing prompts. And again, this AI agent here, this is just a wrapper around ChatGPT. So we'll just set up our credentials and we'll connect with ChatGPT, or we'll connect with, Claude, Anthropic, whatever, right? So when we say training, loosely we're using the word training. What we really mean is we're designing the prompts, right? Just saying, I got a few people watching on YouTube. Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate that. I've only been streaming to YouTube, live to YouTube a little bit, so I appreciate some people hanging out. And there is a little bit more of a lag on YouTube, so if I don't get to your comment right away, it's because I got so many things going on, but I will get to your comments, your questions. So somebody asked, Chris says, AI automation documentation. How do you plan and design automation and design tools? So I usually document things. I like to document things with video, usually because it's easy. I'll use a system like Loom. I'll just record a video and I'll go through what an automation does. And then I tend to start at the most critical things and work my way backwards. So we're covering the most critical tasks. If somebody needs to get in there, make changes, usually me or someone on my team, 6 months later, come back in. What does this do again? And then planning and designing automations. I usually plan, again, using like some kind of workflow graph. But again, depending on the number of initiatives going on, we'll use some higher level graphs to plan some of that stuff out. An example of that would be like this. If we're talking about like how many initiatives do we have going on, this is called an alignment map. We talk about that another time. There's some higher level stuff that I'll do with certain businesses if I'm doing like consulting as a fractional CTO, and we'll plan out more, tactics, strategy. What's the industry doing? Where are we doing research? What part of our systems are like just need help right now? Lots of businesses don't have a strategy. They're just sort of operating and sort of managing a mess, right? Having trouble scaling. Ain says, Michael asks, is this close to Zapier? I think it's a little bit more complex than Zapier. You can do a little bit more with it. Zapier's been around for a while, and there's some cool stuff you can do in there. They're very similar. This is a little bit more developer-y, I think. It's a little bit of a step up in terms of just like the complexity of your workflows. Crown says, I paid someone to build my AI agents. They have been working well, closing at 35%. That's fantastic. Very cool. Ain says, once I find the model that replies best, I push. DeepSeek is the best right now. Surfer SEO is great. I've got some SEO work coming up right away, so I will keep that in my back pocket. I think we've seen this before. Crown says, now I'm trying to build my own. This is what the creator built using Ship. Cool. Nico, everyone I know hates cold calls and cold emails. Targeted ads seem better, but passive. Yeah, cold calling's still a real thing, though. It's still a thing. Why are you mad at Miro? I love that tool, but I've been seeing a lot of people use Whimsical. I'm just like, I paid money to Miro. I signed up. I like upgraded to whatever, and then I couldn't even add icons. All I wanted to do was this. This is my rant. Where is it? This one here. I wanted to add an email icon and a lightning bolt icon, and I already upgraded, and they were like, no, you can't use those unless you upgrade more. And I'm like, are you kidding me? they would allow me to upload my own icons, and they're there. I can see them. But if I want to drag them onto the the canvas, I needed to upgrade again. And I'm like, refund my money now. And somebody recommended Whimsical, and I've been using it ever since. So I'm just like, man, I was raving mad at Miro. I think I'm. So New Avenue says, can you train an AI agent to help a customer fill out a form? Yeah, definitely. I think the way you can do that is just that if you're building an agent, what you can do is have the agent ask questions, and behind the scenes, the agent can fill out the form or submit that, into a spreadsheet or your CRM or whatever that looks like. That's typically how you'll do that. But if you wanted to have an AI agent that a customer had a form they needed to fill out, and they could ask the AI agent, what does this mean? Like if you were talking like a grant application or a complex medical form or something they're trying to fill out and they're not quite sure what the terminology means or something like that, then absolutely, yeah, you could do that. That'd be a great use for AI. Custom GPTs are underrated. Like building a custom GPT to answer questions, maybe as like an internal training resource for your business. I've seen people do this in like legal fields, in regulatory fields, having custom GPTs trained on very specific government regulations, just to help a team point the team in the right direction on lots of things that they, and optimize their job. It's not going to do their job for them, but just like, hey, here's a bunch of red flags that jumped out right away. Really great use case for AI. Just scrolling back a tiny little bit to make sure I didn't miss any questions. I think I got everything. This is amazing. I think we're just about caught up. We're just about caught up. Yeah, and AIN Radio says email still works and cold calling also works. Cold email and cold calling is still a real thing. I know people hate it, but it's still, and the way you can make those things better is by being more targeted, because there are certain people that are expecting, if you're a marketing director, or if you're like a manager of some kind, or if you're a business owner, like you're just sort of, it's reality that you're going to get a certain amount of cold calls. And so it would actually be really cool to, I just had an idea, to set up an inbound agent that for a business owner, and its job was just to handle cold calls. And then it would screen the cold callers. It would have a conversation with the cold callers, and then categorize things, be like, hey, this is Aaron's AI cold call screener, and I'll have a conversation with you, and I might be interested in your thing, pitch it to me. And then what I'll do is I'll recommend to the real Aaron that they might want to look at this if it's relevant. That'd be kind of fun. AIN Radio says, this has been a fantastic conversation. I am trying, sorry, the comment moved on me. I'm trying to automate outreach as much as possible. Also content. Yeah, both good scenarios. Content, just be careful with that. Make sure it's high quality content, because the networks are being flooded with, slop right now. So you still make sure that it's good, high quality content, and you should be fine, right? Don't just publish straight to your network. Just make sure you're doing drafts. Yeah, thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it. All right. Alex says, any good websites about HPC or deploying LLMs on a server and configure it if the server is physical? I've used DigitalOcean's. Was that the one? There was another serverless system I used a while ago. There was a system I used a while ago that would let you do like sort of a serverless thing. You just paid by the minute. It was, what was it, 25 cents a minute or something? And they just provision GPUs for you or whatever. I've recently used DigitalOcean's system, because you can provision GPUs on DigitalOcean. Same thing. It's like how many ever cents a minute. And then you can it's sort of set up. They have some services in there where they have pre-installed models that you can just spit up and run. But I've successfully pulled down various models off of Hugging Face and run them as well. That was pre-Christmas. I was doing some stuff that had to be in a sort of a secure private system. I couldn't use ChatGPT because of slightly more sensitive information, and just because of my contract. And so I just spun up some stuff on DigitalOcean. But there are a few services out there. Nico says AI cold call screening would be better than me cursing at the other person. Yeah. Ain says, I use human in the loop model. Yep, makes sense. The SEO tool, was it SEMrush or was it another one we just looked at? Surfer SEO. First thing you can see is I looked at the pricing. I want to know, what does it cost? So this one, their basic plan, $80, track 200 pages across your site, will write and optimize 360 articles per year, and generate 60 rank ready AI articles per year. You can have up to 5 teammates. That's probably worth it. I mean, if I spend a day working on, SEO optimization for something, it's going to be more than $79 and I can't write 200 pages. DM6, what is a good certification to get as a cybersecurity specialist to be familiar with AI? I don't have a recommendation for you. There's stuff out there, but I'm not up on it. I think I'd have to go back through my DMs. I had this conversation with somebody recently about cybersecurity certifications. I think if you're taking one of the sort of mainstream certifications, they'll probably have an AI component to it. But yeah, I'm not going to be able to give you a great recommendation, unfortunately. Evid says, Evid, are you using the paid version of GPT to implement this API? Yes. With OpenAI, you sort of have to just pay for credits, but it's like, again, I think I preload mine with $50 and that lasts me months sometimes, depending on how much I'm doing. When I was doing the processing of the online reviews and the social media stuff, I think I did about 7,000 social media posts I was categorizing. And then also I was doing sentiment analysis on online reviews. And I think there were 8,000 or 9,000 reviews. And again, like I was just saying, like, take this and categorize it based on these parameters and give me back this data. Using OpenAI, I was using GPT 4.0. And I think those 15,000 records, it was $10. Like, it wasn't much. Which is like, you can process a lot of data. If you're getting into tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of records, then yeah, it's going to add up. But that'll make the model, keep your token set limit down, use a smaller model if it works. And then probably, DeepSeek or these cheaper models that are coming out. But ChatGPT does mostly what I need right now. So that's what I use. Why not use Go High Level? I use Go High Level all the time. But it's a CRM and a marketing system, websites. The agents that you can build within High Level are pretty limited. So it works good for what it does. You can add in like a basic knowledge base, and that looks like they're going to have outbound and some of that kind of stuff fairly soon. But I don't just do AI stuff. I do automation. So I'm building out workflows. And so for something like an AI agent, we were working on this particular workflow where I was having a custom personal assistant do some research on a potential client for me. If somebody books on my calendar, it would take their email, go scrape their website, stuff that into a personal assistant for that customer. But this resulted in many different scenarios in Make.com. Again, Make.com is simple and easy to get into, but we ended up with all these different scenarios, and I think I can get that into kind of one workflow in n8n. So we're going to explore that over the next little bit. Nico says, I found that Notebook LM is better than ChatGPT. Wish they offered an API. They probably will soon. I haven't played with Notebook LM yet, but I've heard good things about it. Zanny says, what is n8n? This is a workflow automation tool for building out custom workflows. What's an example of this? If you had a workflow that I did recently was you could build a chatbot with this. You could build a personal AI agent with this. This is what I was sort of working on the other day. So if I get a booking email that comes into my email, I have an email rule. I want to forward that automatically to my personal agent, my personal assistant. And then I want it to go out and scrape the potential client's website. If it's a business email, if they have a website, I want to scrape that, all of that data, and I want to stuff that into a personal GPT, a custom OpenAI assistant, just trained on that customer. And then eventually down the road, when I have a meeting, when we have a kickoff meeting or a discovery call, then when the transcript comes in, I also want to take that and stuff that into the same assistant. So I've got one assistant that just understands the conversations I've had with one customer. It's trained on my business processes, and then I can sort of brainstorm with that. Or if you work with a lot of customers over a period of time, and you get to a point where you're like, oh yeah, geez, Peter, we talked 6 months ago. And then I have to go back and look at your website again. And I have to like get back in the headspace of like, oh yeah, that's what you do. This is what we were talking about. Um, so in this particular case, I can just go back and have a conversation. And Adventurepreneur says, this is exactly what I use Notebook LM for. Works great. I'll have to look into that. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's just for my own personal use. Mostly I did it for two reasons. We got to do these, we did these live. So we did these live on TikTok, just building these out just for fun as a demonstration. Here's how you use the tools. Here's how we put the pieces together. We talked about webhooks. We talked about APIs. We talked about, crawling websites and different services. And then lots of people would recommend tools. So we use this as a sort of like a teaching tool or conversational tool as much as anything, right? And then if I ever get there, this will save me a few hours a week. It's not like I limit myself to so many calls a week. So I do research. If you book on my calendar, I will go check out your website. I will go see what you do. So this is so if you book with me, don't ghost me on that call because I'm going to put about an hour into research on your business. Just so I come prepared, just so I know what it is that you do. So this has saved me a few hours a week kind of thing. But if Notebook LM can do that, that's great. What does your personal assistant run on? Right now, it was running on make.com. So we were building this out. It was literally just ChatGPT with access to some custom functions. And so that looked like this. That ChatGPT was in this part of the workflow. And we built out the custom actions so that custom GPT could, or it's an OpenAI assistant is what it is. It had access to other tools that could go out and scrape websites, and then there was another scenario that would handle that data. So we did that on previous lives. You can go find those on my YouTube if you're interested in those. You want to go back and watch those, I do put all my videos on YouTube. I've been live streaming on YouTube now. So just a quick wave to my YouTube watchers right now. I've just started streaming on both platforms. And so if you're not sure where my recent lives were on my YouTube, they're under the live tab and not under my videos tab. Yeah, I'm going to have to go check out Notebook LM. Yeah, Make versus Zapier. I personally use Zapier, but I have clients that use Make. So I personally use Make, but I have clients that use Zapier. You can tell I've been on the live for a while now. I'm starting to get tired. I find that Make is a little bit more approachable. It's a little bit more intuitive, but they're both powerful. There's a few things in Zapier I like that Make doesn't do well. But yeah, they're both generally the same. Pick the one that makes sense to you. They both have lots of integrations. On my YouTube, if you go to my link tree, click on the link in my bio, it'll go to my link tree. Click on the YouTube icon in there, you can find me there. Or Cloudcraft Software. I'm not sure if I come up, if you actually search YouTube Cloudcraft. Let me do it here. YouTube Cloudcraft Software, all one word. There's another company in the US out there called Cloudcraft, so I have to kind of work. But let me see. Cloudcraft by Datadog. That's not me. So yeah, you have to, one word, Cloudcraft Software. That's me, Aaron and Automation. So you can find me there. Or go to my link tree. You can find it there too. Yeah. Yeah, and I think Zapier does the job. It's great. If there's anybody on the live, I will pitch our Discord too. If you jump in the link tree, we have a free Discord server that we're set up. If you're getting into AI and automation, we're building a community of just folks that want to support each other in terms of like different tools, helping each other solve problems. If you're running into problems with your automation, or if you have an idea that you're trying to build out and you're not sure what might be the right approach, if you're just struggling with some of the logic, or you're stuck on something a little bit more advanced, maybe you're trying to use a regular expression, maybe you're trying to scrape some data, whatever that looks like, we do have a Discord we're firing up. Again, it's just a small community. We've just had a whole influx of people in the last couple of days, which is great. We'll just kind of keep it small, and then and it's just, we're all just there trying to help each other out with our automations and stuff. If you have a business that's you're struggling with automations, you're looking to integrate AI, or you're just curious about these tools and how you might modernize some of your systems, build things out, feel free to reach out to me. I do this as my day job. I work with organizations and companies to modernize their systems, to systemize their processes, and to integrate AI into their workflows. Yeah, I just got a few new subscribers. I saw the emails come in. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's awesome. Love all of the discussion. I really appreciate everybody on the live today. It's been a really fantastic discussion. I'm going to go for about 10 or 15 more minutes. Just any last minute comments that come in. We've been live for about 3 hours. Again, you can find this live on my YouTube. If you go back there, I'm streaming on the YouTube as well. You can go back and click the live tab and catch the replay and some of the conversation. Lots of great recommendations for AI tools today. Lots of great conversation. Uh, yeah, excellent. My field is, so my background's in software engineering. I'm a generalist. So I've spent the last 15 years or so mostly in cloud computing, automation in the software side. We kind of call it DevOps, but more than that. And I also study business strategy and IT strategy, the likes of Simon Wardley. Um, and so I work with businesses to help sort of bridge the tech gap. Understand. I work with businesses sometimes. They're curious about how to use AI or how to systemize some different things. I work with businesses sometimes they're trying to scale stuff and they're struggling. They've got too many things going on. Business owners that struggle because they're involved in every single decision or every single process of their business and they don't know how to get out of that. Sometimes it's retirees that are looking to systemize things so they can just step away a little bit. Sometimes it's businesses that are just hitting that sort of that scaling wall. They all of a sudden need to systemize a lot of things and they're not quite sure how. And I work with businesses sometimes that are they're just behind on tech and they realize that, wow, all of this stuff just came out and we're still using the same spreadsheets we've been using for the last 20 years and we don't know how to change this. I work with a lot of companies like that. So I can come in and start plugging into your existing processes. We can do training for your staff. We can talk about how to use some of these tools. The highest leverage thing you can do in your business is to train your staff how to use this stuff because your staff already understand your problems. Your staff already understand the challenges you face as an organization. And I guarantee you, your staff already have ideas about how to make your business better, how to grow, how to drive the bottom line. But they're too busy stuck in the day-to-day loop, dealing with fires, dealing with the same stuff to have an impact on your business. The best thing you can do is train your staff how to use this stuff and then let them loose in their different departments, right? Have an AI team or have an automation team or whatever that looks like. So we work with businesses to implement some of that stuff. And sometimes that can just be adding a custom GPT just to answer questions faster. Help if you can speed up your training because turnover is a real thing, right? Speed up your training, optimize some of your processes, give your staff back some of their time in the day. Yeah, all of that kind of stuff. Claire asks, I'm sincerely curious, is AI bad for the environment? I think we're building out all these data centers and consuming massive amounts of electricity. I think probably a lot of our commercial endeavors are inherently bad for the environment because they're extractive by nature, right? Bitcoin, which serves as a store of value, but doesn't really do much else. We're sort of consuming scathes of electricity to, have a monetary system. There's a lot of this that doesn't make sense. So I, for that reason, I tend to focus more on the automation side with the sprinkle of AI. I think a lot of AI is hype right now, and a lot of businesses don't need AI. What they need is systemization. I don't know if I can change that. I don't know if I can change. I think we need better regulation at the top, probably, or we need people in positions of power at these businesses to make better decisions, to find better ways to do these things. So we should keep talking about that. We definitely need to we need to continue the conversation about the impacts that we have on the ecosystem around us. And like even when we're displacing jobs and stuff, I will never advocate for getting rid of your staff and replacing them with AI, which is just a bad idea. It's high risk, right? But you can use these systems to sort of make your job more meaningful, help people focus on things that are more creative or interesting, help your businesses grow. You'll find that I'm a little bit slow moving. I move slow. I'm a little bit more conservative in how I approach new technology. And I'm always an advocate for relationships and connection, working with businesses, right? Businesses can be a collaborative effort, right? Where we can all grow together and, what do we want? We want to be happy. We want to live our lives and be happy and raise our kids and have a place where we can, I don't know, maybe some of us collect Lego or maybe instruments or something, right? A bunch of new questions rolled in. So let me see here. So I don't know if that was a great answer, Claire. I think it we need to be mindful that um, when we buy into these things that there are sort of both sides. There are benefits, but there's also an impact that comes with that, right? I am Connor Lee says, still trying to figure out how to automate video creation via ChatGPT prompt social media. I'm kind of bearish on the automated video creation. I think it'll be like I see Sora and different stuff's come out. Eh. The problem with AI is I'm immediately distrustful of AI as it is because all AI systems are non-deterministic. They're not really like I don't even like that they're getting realistic or whatever. But as soon as I see that your content is AI generated, I just immediately kind of distrust it. So I says, are the tools free to integrate in a company's system, or do you have to pay? Uh, any tool that's worth integrating into your company, you should probably pay for because it's dry. It's giving you time or money back or both, right? But there are lots of free systems out there. I've only got time for a few more questions. I do have to wrap up here soon, so we'll just go maybe the last few questions before we wrap up today. Adam asks, is there a good way to give ChatGPT access to my email that I can ask it general questions? You can connect it to your email. Just be cautious. You're feeding all of that data into OpenAI's system, right? So just be mindful. But yeah, it can be done. With I like to selectively forward emails into ChatGPT. I'll forward emails in. I'll even keep them in Airtable if I want my agent or my assistant to have access to a history. I'll do it that way, but I won't just blatantly forward everything in there, just for security reasons. Okay, a couple more questions before we wrap this up. Is this better than Do Browser AI? Do Browser looks interesting. I've only looked at it. Still, all of that is very experimental. So I will just lay back and watch and see where that stuff goes. Because you can get into a real mess if all of a sudden you give an agent a task and let it run loose with your browser and you're not keeping an eye on it. What is the risk? What does it have access to on your computer? Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that space for a bit. Hey, Beefy Daddy says, gave a follow. Appreciate it. Sounds like a great thing here. Can't wait to dig in. You can catch the replay on my YouTube. The live streaming there as well. You can grab that. And I appreciate the follow. Thanks for that. JML, hey, my bro, are you available for services? Absolute, for return for shares in the company. Let's talk. Send me a message. We'll see what you're doing. Bullish or bearish on digital marketing and AI automation? I'm kind of. I think we should be utilizing it in the way that it's saving us time, and it should save us time. And if we can do that, we still need to be cautious because when we're marketing, we need to focus on quality, right? We still need to focus on those connections, that relationship. So I'm somewhere in the middle. A couple more questions before I shut down. I really do have to go. Beefy Daddy asks, is there something I can do at work for automation without risking security? It depends on your field. So focus on the low security areas, or you can do, if you have sensitive information, you can de-risk the information through anonymization. So if you have records that you want to be able to use with an LLM and they have, say, like PII or something sensitive in there, if you can still do something, for instance, if you just pass in a birth date, that's not sensitive. It's only sensitive if it's attached to, if it can be used to identify a person. So if you pass in a birth date with an address, now all of a sudden that's sensitive, right? So if you can get the data into a position where you can send it into a system and make decisions on that without sending. So you might create some kind of unique identifier in your system where you have the original records, send the anonymized data in, make some decisions on it, categorize it, whatever that looks like, right? Like if you have a bunch of feedback from your customers, you can send all of that feedback into an LLM to have it categorized without sending the emails in. You just, create an ID or the row ID in a spreadsheet or something. When it comes back, then you just reattach that back to that customer. So you anonymize it to do that categorization. Otherwise, what you can do for automation is you can bring, like we're looking on screen here, we have n8n. You could bring this in-house, and then the LLMs that you connect it to, you could also host those in-house or host those in a private secure cloud or something like that, so that you're not sending it into third-party systems. You can keep that in your own system. You have a few different options there. Yeah. I've got time for 2 more questions. I'm gonna just pluck 2 more questions off the chat. And then I do have to shut down because I've got obligations in 15 minutes. So Royal Home Restoration says, hi, How can I take out the Google Sites, take out the Google, do you mean Street View? Google Street View automatically. How can I take it out automatically? I don't think I understand the question. I don't think I understand the question. Vane says, are you familiar with the storyline of Metal Gear Solid 2? I am not. Unfortunately. Brandis says, you ever heard of repeat automation? Repeat automation, is that what you mean? Not quite sure what you're getting at. I do have to shut down the live. This has been really great. We jumped back up to 70 viewers again. If you're just tuning in now, we're just shutting down. I am streaming live on YouTube, so you can go catch the replay on my YouTube channel. Click the links in the bio. If you click on my link tree, there's a link to my YouTube right at the top there. And I do consulting if you're interested in AI or automation or AI integration in your business. Feel free to reach out. I appreciate all of the new followers. And again, jump over to YouTube. You could find the recap there. And if you're into automation, check out our Discord. Again, links in the bio. And if you need some help with your automations, you're just getting started and need some support, we're building a community where everybody can support each other in their automation journey. So check that out as well. Thanks to everybody who's on the live today. I go live every Friday and Saturday when I can. Friday, 2 o'clock Pacific. We'll hope to see you on the next one. And yeah, I hope everybody has enjoys the rest